Hello everyone. If you are new to my channel, then consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do it, thanks. By the way, I also have a Luffy fan fiction channel. If you are interested, the link is in the description. A New Life by the Ethereal Lord. After a shocking discovery during his battle with Kaguya, Naruto gets transported into the DC universe with an unlikely companion in tow. Now he has to adapt to a world of caped heroes and villains, one of whom he may even know. I don't own anything adios.
The first arrow whizzed through the air in a blur before bouncing off the edge of the large bull's eye. The second never even got close to the target. The third bounced off the wall about a foot away from the target. God damn it. Wally snapped as he angrily threw the bow in his hand to the ground before crossing his arms across his chest and pouting petulantly. Why I'm not getting it? Maybe because archery isn't anywhere near as simple as it seems, smirked as he carefully pulled back on the drawstring, his stance perfectly mimicking what he'd observed from Artemis. No way. The speedster shot back. It's just a classic application of physics, elasticity, projectile motion, etc. All of which I have down pat. There's no logical reason for me not to hit the target. Finger motion. Oliver Queen in his green arrow persona grinned as he helped Megan adjust her stance. You're letting the drawstring roll between your fingers instead of simply letting go the instant you're ready to shoot. Also, your stance is a little bit too loose, so you're constantly trying to compensate for the minute shifts in your aim. Gee Wally, wasn't that the very first mistake you warned us against? Connor grinned as he prepared to take his own shot. It's like you're just not cut out for this. I think you're right, Connor added, heaping salt on the speedster's already bruised ego. I mean, Artemis is just such a natural at this. With a snarl of anger, the redhead grabbed his bow and took up the stance again. This time, he decided to forego the arrows so he could perfect his stance. Honestly, though, I don't get why we have to work on archery. I mean, I move so fast I can literally catch these arrows on a bad day. But not fast enough to avoid tripping over your own feet. Connor sniped, leading to hollering loudly. The speedster just rolled his eyes at them. Look, my point is simple. Why exactly is one of the world's fastest men learning how to use archaic weapons? Now I'll have you know that these archaic weapons have saved my life a couple of times, Green Arrow said as he walked over to join the guys. And while you're right about being orders of magnitude faster than simple arrows, I have a simple question to ask. What will you do if you ever find yourself in a situation where your powers don't work? His innate nature almost spurred the redhead to throw back a witty comeback. His more logical self kicked in, telling him to shut up as the hero in green had a point he intended to make. Now, while I certainly won't expect you to go out of your way to grab a bow and a quiver, having the skill in the back of your mind is certainly leagues better than not. The Emerald Archer continued. It's why those of us without power have something of an edge over you guys. While you tend to specialize almost exclusively in the various ways to use your powers, we never had them in the first place, so we have no crutch to lean on. To us, it's gain multiple skills and stay one step ahead of the game or stagnate and become predictable. There's a little joke Canary and I often share when we're about to learn something new that seems completely unnecessary. Want to hear it? The three boys showed their assent in different ways. Wally with a nod, a grunt from Connor and an enthusiastic hum from. Simply put, it goes. Better to look back when you're a geriatric and say, huh, I never needed to use that, than be stuck in a situation where you need it and be caught pants down. Long-winded but has its merits. Admitted. They seem to be having fun. Kaguya smiled as she watched the rest of the team from the bank of monitors in the training room's control center. Green Arrow's presence here in particular seems to have lifted their morale. It's as a result of something I discussed with Batman, Canary replied, her eyes locked on the spar between Donna and Calder. Black Ops team or not, they need to know that we aren't just using them as a means to an end. We have to show them that we can see them, their efforts and successes, and that we appreciate them for it. I know that Batman, myself and Cyborg are often around, but they see us as more of just supervisors than friends, and with Wonder Woman and Aquaman's other duties as well as the Flash's full timetable, Arrow decided to help kickstart things. It is a wonderful idea. Kaguya conceded as she watched Wally try and failed to hit the target again before switching her focus onto the screen the blonde heroine had her eyes on. Connor, especially, needs this kind of acknowledgement, even if it isn't from Superman yet. There might just be a way around that. Canary sighed as Calder got pinned by Donna. Supergirl apparently got wind of things and she came to talk. And while we're still not sure how he'll react, she believes that she can get him to come to terms with who he is. Well, I'm glad that not all Kryptonians are morally stiff jerks. The Offworlder chuckled. So, do you have any idea why Calder's been getting his ass handed to him so easily? He's normally one of the best close-quarter fighters we've got here. The heroine shook her head, a frown creasing her forehead. He's been showing signs of being distracted for a while, though he's also done a pretty good job of hiding it. This is the first time I've actually seen him underperform. Interesting, and Naruto hasn't spoken to you about him? He's been too busy, between his duties to you, the team and now his attempts to help Ivy. Alright then, do you know if today marks any day of special value to him? Or has there been any news from Atlantis, good or bad? Kagaya asked. Not as far as I know. Why? From what I can see, he seems torn, like his head is in one place but his heart's telling him to be somewhere else. The white-haired princess smiled softly as she watched the young Atlantean turn away from the Amazon. He has a connection to his old life that his heart wishes to strengthen but that his head tells him to sever. And that, Canary, is the source of his internal conflict. The heroine seemed amazed. You got all that from a couple seconds of watching him? In my father's words, a kingdom is made up of its people. Understand them and you will know how to lead them. That principle was part of the reason I chose to wander the lands around the kingdom incognito, with only Naruto as my protection. To understand the people on a level 1 never would have been capable of if I just sat in the palace, Kagaya explained, mixing the true story of her life with the cover story she had built up in this world. Within the 3-year period that I had to explore and to learn before returning to take over leadership of the clan from my father, I learned how to read people within a few seconds, to swiftly determine a person's intentions and, depending on how guarded they are, their surface thoughts and emotions to build a baseline profile for them. It's a skill that helped me immensely during my short reign back home. Well damn. Canary whistled as she took in the bits of information the younger woman had just revealed as well as understanding just how skilled the girl had to be at reading people. It wasn't something she hadn't heard of. Between herself and Ollie, she was the better reader after all, but the heroine was certain that probably only Batman could match the level Kagaya had attained. So what would you advise me to do about him? Has the Zeta platform to Atlantis been completed? I believe so, yeah. Then I'd say you should let Calder follow his heart all the way. If his peace is beneath the waters, then keeping him up here will only breed resentment. And if it is up here, then he'll be certain that he followed his heart and he'll never second guess his decision to stay up here again. The white-haired princess answered. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have an important meeting to attend. Recognized. Red Tornado, S03. Hearing the digitized hail, Cyborg turned away from his analysis of the new data Batman had provided on the known members of Tin Time to see the crimson android fully materialize. You're back. Thought you'd been carried off. I have not. The inorganic leaguer replied in the droll monotone its voice was configured to be, the sarcasm flying over its head. Good day, Cyborg. How have things been with the team? Pretty well, all things considered. A simple thought dragged the display from the monitors in the training room over the work he had been doing, showing the available members of the team as they continued their practice with Green Arrow. Wally had, at this point, all but thrown down his bow in frustration and was now ambling over to where McGann stood. They've definitely got the skill to spare and their training sessions are bringing the best out of them. Interesting, though I do not recall Green Arrow being made aware of this team. Not originally, no, but his new protege, Artemis, joined the team a while back so he volunteered to spend a bit of time working with them. Ah, and where is she now? Speedy asked for her assistance on a case. Cyborg replied, recalling the look of utter befuddlement the blonde archer had on her face earlier in the day when he'd asked for her help. By the way, he goes by the title, Red Arrow. Now and the systems have been updated as such. The android inclined its head in thanks for the status update. It would have been embarrassing if he'd attacked the young man due to obsolete information after all. Then, it noticed something. I do not see Raven or Uzumaki. Surely they're still on the team. They are. Cyborg agreed. Raven's on the mainland, she's got a few things she wants to pick up from the bookstore over there. And Uzumaki? He's preoccupied, the watchtower, main hall. Name. Otsutsuki Kaguya. Age. 18. Date of birth, unknown. Place of birth, unknown, off-world, possibly unknown dimension. Alias. Shard affiliation. Lawful good, uncertain. Power, S. Ability to PROECT bone shards outward as projectiles. Ability to manifest bone extensions. Skill, S. Skilled hand-to-hand combatant. Skilled diplomat, unconfirmed. Skilled orator, unconfirmed, pending further additions. Weakness, S. Susceptible to mental manipulation. Means uncertain. Possibly telepathic. Magical means not ruled out. Rumored. Unconfirmed. Susceptible to possession. Rumored. Unconfirmed. Threat level. Delta threat to certain individual League members. Alpha threat to League and Earth as a whole. See notes. Sitting back, the Dark Knight reviewed what had typed out, going over it to ensure that he had made no mistakes, before saving the document onto a specially encrypted partition on the Watchtower's storage drives. While he already had a significantly more detailed report sitting in the Batcave's systems, he had decided to upload a much watered-down copy in the orbital platform as a backup, and now, with the station all but empty, he could do so without much hassle. Recognized. The Atom, J23, spoke too soon. He sighed as he pulled up the analysis Cyborg sent to him regarding the missing data from the Fog's pillaging just before the new arrival got his sight back. Batman. The Atom greeted as he walked up with a flash drive in hand. I didn't expect to see you here. I had a few things I needed to put down. The Dark Knight replied, scrolling through the file on display. "Well, this just makes things easier," the Atom said as he plugged in the flash. "I got the results you wanted." Something about the way the size-altering hero spoke had the bat's danger signs flaring. "How bad is it?" he asked as he got out of the seat and walked over to grab another. "Very," the Atom answered as he took the vacated seat and began opening the files on the flash drive. "You wanted to know what the function of the Bane Venom was in the blockbuster formula, right?" A series of analysis reports popped up over the screen and the scientist spent a few seconds partitioning them such that each of them would show without covering another. "I believe you know what this is." On the screen before the Dark Knight, two animated, three-dimensional molecular models of two different chemical compounds popped up. One he knew by heart, the other he recalled within a few seconds. On the left is Bane's Venom, on the right, the blockbuster formula. Bingo! Seeing as you have a clear idea what the Venom is, I'll skip that. Saying this, the Venom model closed, allowing the blockbuster formula to take up the entire screen. The blockbuster formula is, essentially, an intelligent person's efforts to create a more powerful version of Bane's Venom but without the drawbacks. And, while they didn't quite get there, they sure as hell created something powerful. A serum capable of turning the average person into a hulking brute with strength comparable to that of an Amazon, a quick healing factor and the ability to shrug off most levels of pain without a sweat. Batman grunted. Sounds like they might have gotten what they wanted. At a first glance, maybe. The Atom conceded. But not when you take into consideration the whole Santa Prisca affair you told me about. Without your interference, we likely wouldn't have this bit of insight. Which is? The Bat prompted, talking over the fact the Atom believed him to have taken down the forces on Santa Prisca himself. The size-altering hero shunted a new model over to the second screen. "This is what I got from the final product you obtained on the island. As you might have noticed, Bane's Venom or at least specific elements from it have been bonded to the blockbuster formula. Basically, the new serum from the island uses the Venom as both a catalyst and a stabilizer for the blockbuster formula. Any idea what kind of effects it'll have on the body? Just theoretical now, but that what had me bothered." Two new models showed up, one of a regular human male, the other of a humanoid creature. They sacrificed the permanence of the blockbuster formula for enhanced physical stats across board, controllable transformation and intelligence retention. Batman's eyes narrowed subtly behind his cowl. The subject can control the transformation? Theoretically. The Atom reminded him. Once injected, the subject will be able to control their own transformation into and out of the enhanced state. As far as I can tell, they'll be about 50% stronger than the original blockbuster subjects as well. But most dangerous of all, the subject will retain, at the very least, 50% of their untransformed intelligence. The Bat released a breath as he sat back in the seat, mentally going over all the information he had just seen. Any weaknesses? A few. Subjects can only transform thrice in a day of their own volition. Any more and they simply collapse, unable to utilize the transformation again. They need close to 2 hours between transformations for their bodies to build up sufficient energy to initiate another transformation and, finally, subjects have, at most, a total of an hour per day to spend in their transformed state before the toll on their bodies become too great to handle, at which point their bodies begin to break down until, finally, they tear themselves apart. So it's a question of if their opponents can outlast them, the Dark Knight mused. What about between transformations? Can they still move when they release the transformation? They should be able to, though they'll be stuck at about 50% power for the first 30 minutes. And these calculations, do they factor in energy output? The Dark Knight pressed on, seeing a possible chink in the new serum's formidable defenses, something that the Atom picked up on in seconds. No, these are based on the effects of the serum in a stable state, essentially when the subject is calm. In an excited state, however, say the subject is forced into a fight, well, it is possible that the serum might just burn itself out at a faster rate. Happy Harbor, in a way, peace is the whole problem. How could peace be a problem? Luke asked. Please, don't get me wrong, war is a terrible business, and I hope it never comes again. But there are ways in which war is simple and clear as peace rarely is. In war, the enemy is clear, and he is outside your group. All of your friends and allies must come together for survival. In peacetime, there is no enemy. There are merely people who vote against you on this issue, and side with you on that proposal. We fought the Empire in the name of liberty and justice, but now our task is to make liberty and justice real. We are now seeking to correct wrongs that would have seemed trivial in the old days. There was no time to worry about the fine points of fair legislation when we were about to get our throats cut. Peacetime is complicated, murky. We could win the war by blowing up a Death Star or two, but we can only win the peace by building new space stations, new houses, new cities. That is not a question of largesse or generosity. If we do not rebuild, there will be new unrest, new disturbances, and new war. In peacetime, you cannot win by destroying, but only by building, and it is always far easier to destroy. That is, quite literally, a law of nature. Rebuilding is slow, painstaking work, unsuited to a warrior's mentality. That is the real problem, for people like you and me. We became addicted to the thrills, the challenges, of war, and now they're gone. There are those who will be tempted to stir up trouble just for the sake of having some excitement. I doubt that is so, Mon Mothma, said Luke. There will always be perils and challenges. The universe is a dangerous place. And I also don't know that I am addicted to such things. I could live the rest of my life quite happily if no one ever tried to kill me again. Ambush at Corellia, huh? A clear voice asked, cutting into the slight daze she was in. Looking up from the antique armchair she was curled up in, Raven was met by the smiling face of an elderly woman with gray hair tied into a bun and a few strands hanging free. Hey Mrs. Gonzalez, did I get carried away again? I only started speaking when you came back to our world. The woman answered in a lilting voice, her bright blue eyes crinkling in mirth behind her glasses. Not as bad as some other times, yes? I suppose not. The young magic user smiled as she unfurled herself from the couch and stretched. Oh, to be young and limber again. Haley Gonzalez chuckled. I was just like you with a book back in the day. Just find the nearest couch and curl up like a cat. I try a stunt like that now, though, and I'll be feeling it for months. Joys of being old. Raven laughed as she glanced at her watch. Wow, I've been here a while, is there anything I can help you with before I leave? Let me think, her brow furrowed in thought. Haley leaned just a bit more on her cane to take the weight off her sprained ankle. Well, since Sarah's gonna be dropping by later, I don't quite have much for you to do. Just help me with the box of old tomes the barrister dropped off while you were off fighting aliens with fancy footwork and glowing energy blades. Someone's gotta save the world. She shrugged as she followed the older woman to the front desk of the bookstore and gestured at a small carton lying on the center table. This one right? Because the store was just a converted section of the woman's home, the reception was just a cordoned off section of the living room with the only furniture besides the cash desk being the aforementioned center table and two high-back chairs. The section they'd just come in from, formerly the rest of the living room, now sported 4 wide shelves, 6 couches and another center table and was the storage/library section. The very same, Rachel. Haley nodded as she slowly took a seat on the couch behind the desk. Put the books in the shelf right at the window. Got it. Now with the instructions needed, she hefted the carton up, the deceptively heavy thing throwing her off for a second before she readjusted, and took it to the room. Setting it down at the base, she pulled 2 books out and rested them on her left forearm while creating space with her right hand. I'm surprised that the barrister finally let go of some of these. Sarah told me that he didn't seem quite ready to let them go yet. You'd be surprised what a young beauty will convince a man to do. Haley's voice drifted back. Connie swears that his new secretary has effected a new change in him. Thought you said you didn't exactly trust Connie and her rumor-mongering trade? Slotting the 2 books in. She reached down to pick another pair only to stop short upon seeing a mother chase after her daughter only for the little girl to whirl round and face the older woman, her eyes sparking with bottled-up emotions. She tore into her mother with a tirade of words, angrily bringing up her every point in loud tone, right on Haley's curb. Well, I may have said that, but when the evidence is glaring, the rest of the elderly woman's words were drowned out when Raven tuned into their conversation in time to catch a few of the words the young child was slinging at her mother. You never tell me about Dad. Just that he's out there working, but I've never seen him. Jules, honey, listen, no, you promised that he'd be at school today, but he wasn't, again. With that, the child, a pretty-looking brunette likely not even 12 yet, stormed down the street, leaving her mom, tired-looking and seemingly at her wit's end, crouching on the sidewalk, her face buried in her palms. Unbidden, old repressed memories bubbled back up to the surface. Flashback Azereth, Raven's paw, feeling the peaceful energies of Azereth swirling around me. I reach inward, seeking the tiny thread linking me to the object of my desires. Along the way, I feel more than actually seeing them the other connections, and I sidestep each one that won't carry me to where I need to be. Finally, I find the one I've been searching for, a powerful, bright blue thread connecting me to a darker, more violent link. With little more than a mental shove, I swing past the blue link and trace the darker one. The further I move, the more I feel a pressure on my senses, a nauseating feeling that makes me feel shudders rack up and down my physical body. At the same time, I can hear a rumbling baritone that radiates power tempered by deep-seated concern, urging me forward, praising my progress and urging me to move further. Obviously, Mom's trying to force me away from exploring this connection by exerting her will on me to make me turn back, but I won't. Not this time. On and on I push, the pressure building with every step, growing to include feelings of vertigo and bone-biting cold alternating with skin-sloughing heat. Still I push on. She's not going to stop me this time. Today, I will meet my path abruptly. Everything shatters around me and I feel my consciousness stretch like rubber before painfully snapping back. The first thing I feel as my consciousness settles back into my own body is a skull-splitting headache. I can't even open my eyes out of the fear that the input of information will overload my mind. After a while, I can feel the pain slowly receding and, as it leaves, I become more and more aware of my environment. The first thing I notice is the presence of hands hovering just above my temple and a gentle voice murmuring a chant. A voice I'd recognize anywhere. Mom. I can feel my anger growing inside my chest, threatening to burst out, and a tiny part of me observes. That little connection I made to the darker link inside me grows stronger. My eyes snap open and, as I'd expected, Mom's leaning over me, her eyes closed and her long chestnut hair tickling my nose. Did you do it? Her eyes slowly open and she stares right into my eyes, though I can't tell exactly what she's thinking. Yes. I'm off her lap faster than I've ever moved before, scooting back hurriedly as I try to keep a lid on the fury inside me. Just as I'd expected, she'd cut off the connection I was building, slicing it apart and once again keeping me from my goal. I trailed, pulling at the corners of my eyes. Why? We've discussed this before, Raven. She sounds so coolly detached and, once again, I find myself wishing I could have my warm, caring mom back. I want the woman he used to be before she chose to keep this unnecessary distance between us just so she wouldn't tell me about him. Under no circumstances are you to try to dig about this subject anymore. You're dealing with something. That is the one thing I won't stand for, not anymore. You can't even say what we're talking about, can you? It's always the subject or something. You hate him so much you can't even say who he is, can you? Well, let me say it now. He is my father, my dad, and just because you hate him, you want to use me to spite him. I can see it in her eyes, her body posture. Every word I'm saying hurts her more than anything I've ever said before, and it feels good to finally know that I'm hurting her in any way possible. And then, like a shutter slamming down, her entire posture changes and her eyes regain the blank look of disinterest that I've come to utterly despise. We've discussed this before, Raven, and my stance has not budged. You are, under no circumstances, to have any form of contact with him. With that, she turns to leave, her immaculate robes swirling about her as she moves. Then, at the door, she pauses. You're like a moth, Raven, drawn inexplicably to the alluring beauty of the fire. What you don't quite understand, what I don't want you to understand, is that this fire, it will all too gladly destroy everything you hold dear. I'm not quite sure where it comes from, but it's already out of my mouth by the time I realize that I'm talking. Maybe your hate has made you forget, but fire isn't always destructive. It offers light too, and warmth. Maybe you should remember exactly why you were drawn to him in the first place. Flashback end. Are you alright, dear? For the second time that day, Raven was snapped out of her thoughts by the sound of Haley Gonzalez's voice, this time sounding more concerned than she'd ever heard. As her mind fully reconnected with reality, she realized that she was leaning over the carton, hand outstretched to pick up what was, to her surprise, the last book. You continued the work while you were lost in thought, Rachel, Haley explained as she saw the look of confusion bloom on the girl's face. That's why I didn't quite notice that you weren't with me. Oh, sorry, I hope I didn't get you worried. Raven apologized as she picked the book up. It was an old, leather-bound thing, not much larger than the average hardback novel, with slightly yellowed pages. Stenciled simply in cursive font right at the center of the book was its title, Bindings. It was a curious thing, particularly considering the source, and Haley had no qualms about saying so. Maybe it's an old family heirloom, Raven suggested as she turned the book over to see the back. Nothing but slightly cracked leather. Yet, though extremely faint, the young magic user could feel hints of residual magical energy swirling about it. Oh, that's doubtful, dear. Haley snorted at the thought. The barrister doesn't forget anything, and I certainly can't believe that he'd accidentally drop a family heirloom in a carton of old law books. You'd be surprised what a young beauty can convince a man to do. She shrugged absently, giving the book a final once-over before moving to find a spot for it. Huh. This shelf's full. Oh, don't worry about that, dear. You can have it. The casual delivery of the response, more than the response itself, left Raven gaping. A reaction that did not escape Haley's keen eyes. What? I can see how interested you are in that dusty old thing. Besides, if the barrister comes around searching, then I'll tell him that I'll keep an eye open for it and I'll give you a call. Raven wasn't quite sure of what to say, so she just did the first thing that came to mind. She hugged the woman tightly and thanked her profusely. Washington, D.C., enjoying the view, Your Majesty? The scarred man asked as he walked up to the table behind his companion and picked a glass of white wine. They were standing on the terrace of this penthouse suite atop one of the recently completed skyscrapers jutting up into the skyline, the dark-complexioned woman leaning on the balustrade. We may have lost the direct beauty of the sunrise and sunsets, but I think there is a beauty in this man's progress, his innovation, and the architecture of the modern man. Perhaps to one such as yourself the beauty of nature has lost its allure. She lifted a shoulder elegantly, the diaphanous shawl around her shoulders subtly enhancing the simple motion. I, however, prefer the beauty of the rising sun over the sandy plains of Bialya. It sets the sands alight, I remember, he smiled nostalgically, transforming the white sands to a field of golden dust. The woman turned her head to glance at him, an eyebrow arched questioningly. I do appreciate the splendor of nature, Your Majesty. He sipped from the glass before setting it down on the table beside him. A faint smile crossed her face as she turned back to gaze upon the city life far below, so it would seem. Silence fell upon them and the cool evening breeze blew past. "Should I be worried?" the man asked as he walked up to join her by the balustrades. Instead of leaning forward, though, he turned around, leaning his back on the railing and crossing his legs out in front of him. The eyebrow went back up. "I'm afraid I'm not quite sure what you mean by that." "I'm pretty sure that you do. You're quite the intuitive woman after all." "Humor me," the man sighed, as though pained that he had to be so direct. "You don't like this idea. In fact, I think it goes beyond simple dislike. You hate it." A husky-sounding laugh burst from her throat. "Believe me, Master Savage, I neither hate nor dislike this idea of yours." Then, like a flipped switch, the laughter was gone, the cool indifference back in its place. "I do, however, dislike the timing of this idea." The big bear of a man, now identified as Vandal Savage, seemed surprised. "You didn't bring up any objections during the discussion a few days ago." "Because I have only just begun to see things in a different light." "Explain." "Whether we like it or not, in the aftermath of the apocalyptic invasion, the heroes have become different. Their tactics as a whole might seem the same yet, based on our initial plans, they should never have interfered with Sportsmaster's pickup on Santa Prisca. The brain's calculations based on the data garnered in the past 10 years put the chances of the League's interference with the first or second shipments at a measly 9%. We were lucky to have made off with the first batch thanks, in large part, to the snap decision on Cadmus' head of security to transport the first batch as soon as it was ready. Again, they should never have found the data store for the Fog's stolen data yet. They not only did, they utterly destroyed said data. Just last week we've had to factor in the possibility that Poison Ivy will be unable to work with us on the diversion, and so we've had to make plans to call in the Floronic man whose abilities pale in comparison to Ivy's. And all of this has been achieved by a team comprised of brash teenagers. Do you understand why I feel this plan of yours is a bit hasty, Master Savage? Your focus on diverting the League's attention is good, but ignoring these children is not." With her piece said, she turned back to watch the city. Savage lifted a hand and placed it gently on her shoulder. "Believe me, Your Majesty, I am not underestimating the children. While it might seem like that, I have been keeping a close eye on their activities. After all, even with immortality one does not survive by being oblivious." His words were cut off by a gentle tapping sound that drew their attention over to the glass partitioning the interior of the suite from the terrace. Standing on the interior side of the partition, in suit with a skirt in the place of pants, stood Tara. A slight nod from Savage and she slid the glass open and walked out to meet them. "Kennedy has sent word, Master Savage, Your Highness." He prompted her to speak with a simple, "And the Count has taken off. He hit cruising altitude about 15 minutes ago and has assured that he will inform us when he lands in Vltava." "Thank you, Tara. You may leave." With a small bow, the blonde left the room, knowing that the seeming choice was a front for the order beneath. Alone again, Savage turned to his companion. "As I was saying, Your Highness, I have neither forgotten nor underestimated the young heroes. In fact, I have studied our every confrontation with them and have drawn a few conclusions from them." "Oh," the woman didn't seem particularly impressed. "Do tell." Tio Maro's attempt at corrupting the Red Tornado may have been a failure, but it provided us with the first hints of a problem: a new group of heroes. The Santa Prisca mission clarified most of the new team's members as well as giving us first-hand intel about their abilities. Ivo's Amazo project allowed us to take readings from the League and even some of the new team. Even this last mission with Clarion had multiple objectives, the primary being to test their magical capabilities and a tertiary one which the Witch Boy swears will help to divert attention from us. And how exactly does regicide further our cause? Well, if we succeed, we gain a valuable resource, Vltava. As much faith as I have in our plan and the surety of Bialia's support, I cannot deny the possibility that you might become compromised in the future, and we need to have contingencies for that. Vertigo's country can act as a second basket, so to speak, Savage replied as he walked over to the poolside table. Uncorking the wine from earlier, he filled 2 glasses as he spoke. As a side benefit, the Count has sufficient skill, leadership qualifications and notoriety amongst those in the know, to act as the leader of our little group. I do not see the Lord Regent of Vltava exposing himself to the world on a whim, she countered. The scarred man smiled as he passed her a glass. You remember me telling you that the prototype fog I asked for served its purpose? Well, its purpose was to obtain information from the Vltavan embassy that I had a few of our hackers work on. I'm certain that the Count wouldn't want the world to know that he funds the activities of the rebels undermining Queen Perdita's rule, now would he? So we gain a new resource and a pawn. She mulled as she swirled the contents of her glass around. Perhaps even a bishop. Still has no bearing on what I brought up. Oh, but it does. You see, we currently believe that the Batman is the source of all their intelligence, the children I mean. Now, we can find out just how the Bat thinks when he's thrust into a double-pronged attack. We've squeezed out as much data as we can from the sphere Desaad promised. Now, we'll lure them in and Simone can have a go at figuring out just how powerful their telepath is. While we, at the same time, make our move on Perdita." The woman nodded slowly as the pieces of the plan clicked into place in her head. The Batman must prioritize this. Send the rookie squad after the unknown energy pulses, or have them find and protect the queen. And thanks to the diplomatic visit, the young queen will be arriving here in just over 2 weeks, enough time for word to have spread round the grapevine about the target and the parameters, but not enough time or the bat to have come up with a full-on counter. He smiled around the rim of his glass as he quaffed the wine. "So, Your Majesty, do you still think I'm underestimating them? You've given me a bit to think of." Gotham flashback. The last thing she had expected was to open her eyes. After all, she could, even now, recall the sharp pain in her side, and the image of the vial of her serum poking out from between her ribs was as clear now as when she'd first seen it. She had died. Yet here she was, eyes open, her mind clearly at ease with the situation, judging by the fact that she wasn't screaming her head off or just generally freaking out. She'd had a few religious friends back in her college days, some Christian, some Jewish, others Muslim, Buddhists and more. They'd often debate on the afterlife during their off days and, though she'd never participated, she found herself thinking back to those discussions. Is this the afterlife? She wondered, her vision still filled with the blurry white of wherever she was. Am I dead? Not yet, dear child. A new voice whispered comfortingly, although you did come quite close to crossing the black gates. Even with the aura of warmth the voice projected, she couldn't help the shiver she felt rush down her spine. Gazing around to find the source of the voice was to no avail, as everywhere she looked, she saw only the indistinct whiteness that she had first seen. Who's there?
Dear child, do you not see me? The voice sounded about as confused as she did. I am here, right before your eyes. The shivers of fear had become icy claws of dread. Was she blind? After all, that had to be the reason she couldn't see anything. Blindness, she'd have to be re-educated, taught how to read Braille, keep an audio recorder to keep track of her thoughts. Heavens, she'd need a lab assistant to help her at work, and, thanks to her all too recent experience with Woodrow, she sure as hell wouldn't be doing that.
Like shattered glass, all her dreams and ambitions came crashing down about her head. All she'd worked for, all she dreamed of. Child. The voice cut into the spiraling vortex of her thoughts. Do not fret, child. I shouldn't fret. The thoughts came up in a bubble of rage mixed with despair. I have lost the ability to do everything that I have dreamed of since I was a child, and you expect me not to fret? I do, dear child, the voice replied, as calm and calming as ever. Now, focus on my voice, dear child, and open your eyes. She wanted to rage at the simple words. Did the owner of this voice think she was such a fool? Yet, inexplicably, she found herself thinking the words over calmly.
She had nothing to lose if she followed the voice's directive. True, it would break her heart for her fears of blindness to be confirmed, but then, she already thought she was blind, so.
Taking in a deep breath, she focused on her eyes, on opening her eyelids to see wherever she was.
That's it, child, the voice encouraged softly. Focus, do not worry about when to open your eyes. Just focus. Most of all, she focused on the voice, letting it guide her onward until she felt it, a sensation like cool oil flowing through her mind, strengthening her. She opened her eyes, and saw paradise. That was all her mind could bring up to describe it. A paradise the likes of which no other human had ever seen.
It was a jungle and a flower garden and a greenhouse all rolled up into a single place. It seemed chaotic, vines crisscrossing about and leaves swaying all about, yet she could sense a pattern of orderliness in it. Her experienced eyes picked out various plants that shouldn't have been able to coexist due to climatic conditions, all thriving here as colors that should have clashed mingled perfectly as the flowers bloomed before her eyes, and the smell. I had to be dead, she concluded as she sat up, all fears of blindness forgotten in the majestic beauty of this place. Nothing like this exists on Earth. Nothing like this can exist on Earth.
To be honest, child, you're not quite on the Earth at the moment. She spun round upon hearing the voice echo all around her. She'd thought it was a figment of her imagination, but now.
Who's there? Be calm, child. I will not harm you. The voice now seemed less diffuse, coming from a spot just behind her, and she turned to see who it was. Her breath caught in her throat. While not an over-the-top pervert, she most assuredly wasn't a prude. She had, over her time, to enjoy the human body, both male and female, and often found herself ranking people based on their looks. The woman in front of her was simply beyond words. It was like looking at the physical embodiment of this paradise. Everything about this woman screamed perfection and balance. And her eyes, they were green. No whites, no irises, just twin orbs of the most vibrant verdant. How do you feel, child? The woman asked as she sat beside her. Though you had woken earlier, your mind was incapable of seeing the beauty of this realm without a little protection. I feel great. She stuttered, barely registering the fact that the woman had explained away her period of blindness. I feel fine. Good. The woman replied simply, reclining on a mound of leaves that she would have sworn weren't there moments ago. Okay, Pam, breathe. Just breathe and take a moment to think things through. She thought to herself. Let's start off with location. With that thought decided upon, she spoke up. This place, well, I suppose you could consider this to be an aspect of nature, a single plane in this realm.
An aspect of nature. Indeed, the woman replied. Of course, this is simply my home, not the entirety of this plane. Between my brethren and I, we share the entirety of this plane. We have our name for this place, but I believe humans would simply call it the Green. The Green, Pamela repeated, feeling just a bit overwhelmed by what she was hearing but craving to hear more. And you said brethren.
I did. I am Inashe, she said with a little inclining of her head. My brethren and I form what you would call the Council of the Green. Flashback end when her eyes snapped open. Pamela Isley expected to be in her own version of the Eden Inashe had shown her. Barring that, she expected the barrenness of her customized cell at Arkham.
Getting neither was the first sign that things weren't normal.
The second was the silence. Ever since she'd taken up the mantle of the champion of the Green, she'd been hearing the whispers of her children. Plant life the world over sought to communicate with their champion, to tell her of the horrible things man had done or planned to do against her domain. It was both a blessing and a curse. The only thing that had helped her retain her sanity after her first stint in Arkham, yet the reason she sometimes wished not to sleep. It was one of her most basic abilities. And she now couldn't hear them. It sent a pang of raw terror running down her spine. Not once, in all the time she had been captured and imprisoned, had she ever been deprived of the voice of her children. Not in the custom cell designed for her in Arkham, not even when she had been injected with the Batman's power-dampening cocktail. It terrified her, yet, she found herself baffled by the experience. She could feel her connection to the Green. It was still there, still keeping her alive, yet he could not call on its powers. Also, as far as her surroundings told her, she wasn't in any conventional prison that she knew of. After all, which correctional facility provided a clean room complete with a bed, side table and lamp, a dressing table beside an open window, no less, and what seemed to be a fully functional bathroom for the inmates.
And they didn't even strip me either. She thought as she took in her state of dress, the leaves she often bound to her clothes must have fallen off at some point after her abilities had been dampened, and so she was left in the modified corset, bikini and gloves she typically wore. A quick glance downward showed that only her boots had been taken off and they had been carefully set beside the bed.
No, she decided as she swung out of the bed and headed for the window. This may not be a conventional prison, but it is a prison all the same. As expected, this room is at least a floor above the ground level, which would explain why the windows are unsealed. They know I won't get far without my children. Having come to that conclusion, she turned toward the bathroom. They likely don't want me dead, whoever brought me here. There's really no point in stripping me of my abilities and allowing me to enjoy such a pleasant night. She found herself stopped short by the first thing she saw in the bathroom. And a change of clothes too. If they actually want me dead, then they have a really strange way of going about it. So now he's waiting for the book? Naruto asked, switching the phone to his left hand to hold to his ear while he reached down to pull open the oven. Yeah, Kagaya replied. He says that he should be able to get it proofread within 3 weeks of his getting it. Alright then, send me his mail and I'll send the draft copy over. Sure. How's Miss Isley doing? Carefully, to avoid spillage, he pulled out the pan-carrying leg of mutton he'd been roasting. She was still asleep about 20 minutes ago. Beyond that, though, I'd say she's okay. Fine. I'll talk to you later. Bye. Sparing a glance at the phone to cut the connection, he slipped the device into his back pocket and focused on transferring the meat onto a tray and draining the gravy into a container he'd prepared in advance. All of this was almost mechanical though, as his mind was on his guest. From what he'd been told by Yggdrasil, Pamela had been chosen as the champion of the Green, representative of their council. Or perhaps the term ambassador was a better fit. Whichever it was, she wielded phenomenal powers over plants to aid her in her task of protecting plant life all over the world. It is, at its core, a good, maybe even a noble cause. He thought as he worked. Animal life is, after all, tied very closely to plant life. So why? Why did she choose to go down the path of direct aggression instead of trying out a more peaceful approach? Was it something related to Inashe? After all, according to Yggdrasil, champions often took on certain characteristics of the one who had brought them before the Green. Maybe certain elements of the disemboweling sea of trees had bled into her chosen? Further rumination upon the matter was brought to a halt, though, when he picked up the sound of a door being shut. Taking a quick moment to rinse his hands, he grabbed the gravy container and stashed it in the refrigerator for the time being as he made his way into the living room. Her back was turned to him as she stared about the admittedly Spartan furnishings of the large room. He had taken her to the safe house that Batman had all but given him instead of the more frequently used place at the harbor as a precaution. I'm glad to see you up, he said, and he observed the slight tensing of her shoulders before she calmly turned to face him but said nothing of it. I was afraid that you might have been forced into a coma by my actions. She said nothing, her green eyes staring intently at him as she crossed her arms underneath her bust. Naruto sighed internally as he walked over to a chair a few feet away from where she stood, hoping that things would go, if not smoothly, then at the very least without too many hiccups. "Are the clothes okay?" he asked, pressing on with a lighter issue. "Or you prefer a change? If so, then please let me know your preferences and I will try to get them for you." The clothes she was in at the moment, a pair of jeans and a plain black tee, had been picked out by Kaguya based on their simplicity. "These are adequate," she replied slowly, seemingly bothered by the question before her eyes hardened. "I take it you're my captor?" The shinobi winced slightly at the last word. His actions did make him seem like a captor. I suppose I will have to tentatively accept that designation. Though, in all honesty, I really would have preferred it if we'd met under different circumstances. Those verdant eyes glared at him spitefully. What kind of circumstances? At the very least, one that didn't involve me having to stop you from killing people and then pulling you out of a building that the police were very much in, he shot back, slightly annoyed by her tone. "The only reason you're not in a cell at the moment is because I pulled you out of that building." Abruptly, her expression changed from veiled anger to a mocking sneer. "What, and that makes you a hero? I'll have to remind you, Mr. I pulled your ass out of the fire, that I was perfectly capable of getting out of that building until you did whatever it was that you did and stripped me of my connection to my children. That inside here I'm in as much of a cell as I would have been back at Arkham, except inside here I can't hear them. I can't hear the voices of my children even though I should, and I know that it is because you did something to me." Her voice had risen as she raged at him, and so, now, her chest heaved as she took in gulps of air to calm herself down. For an instant, a mere fraction of a second, Naruto felt rage threatened to overcome him. That moment flashed by and all he knew in its wake was guilt. In her anger-filled rant, he had heard the cries of the little girl, Pammy, and he heard the underlying message in her words. "You've cut me off from the only companions I have learned to trust." He couldn't be angry at that, not when he, even now, remembered the feeling of being all alone in the world. I'm sorry," he started, a bit reluctantly. "I didn't know your connection to the plant life was so powerful, and when I altered the serum, I used to dampen your powers. I didn't realize that it would cause you such pain." She tried to glare at him and make demands but failed horribly and could only turn away from him. "Just give it back." Hearing the brokenness in her voice made him flinch as though he'd been struck, and the words he spoke next had him feeling like an absolute heel. "I can't." She turned to him so quickly he was half expecting her to grab her neck in pain of the whiplash. Her eyes, once brimming with anger and indignation, were now swimming in tears. "I don't need to be able to call them to me. I don't care about having them attack you or defend me. I just need to hear them. I need to hear my babies, please." The desperation in her tone was heart-wrenching, yet he remained steadfast. To do what she asked, he would have to understand her abilities, know just how connected she was to the green, and Kami did he hate how much that made him sound like Kabuto before he could adjust the dampening seal he had placed on her. That wasn't something he could simply tweak and hope for the best, because if her powers surged out of control then the Gotham docks would suffer for it. And, should things flip around and her connection to the green be fully cut off, she would, almost certainly die. Perhaps she had read into his silence or was simply better at reading people's body language. Whatever the case, she had read into his silence and understood that he couldn't do anything at the moment. The tears, after a while, stopped, and she simply turned away from him to stare at the opposite wall. After a while, she spoke up again. "Why did you bring me here? Clearly you don't want to kill me, and I see no point in my being kept around like a pet if I can even do any tricks."
He sighed again. She was back to being snarky. "I wanted to talk to you. It's what I meant when I said that I'd wished we met under different circumstances."
"And what exactly did you want to talk about?" The blonde held up his hands, gesturing that she should remain calm. "I just wanted to understand why you chose to become Poison Ivy." Excerpt taken from Star Wars, The Corellian Trilogy. Ambush at Corellia Chapter 4, The Dangers of Peace. For some reason, this chapter, about half of the entire bloody F***king reason I added the Poison Ivy storyline, was almost ruined by a number of factors. For starters, by the time I got around to starting this, the Council of the Green portion, the council discussing with Naruto about Pamela, was wiped from my system together with a bunch of other documents. Then, when I finally got around halfway through this chapter, the laptop gave out on me. I just got it fixed and the second half of this chapter was pretty much just thrown together over 24 hours. I'm not even sure I can deliver on getting the council convo back into the story. Damn it. Considering the fact that Pammy may not even show up for a while just makes me feel even worse about this. Anyway, the chapter takes place during the episode Downtime, and, with this, I can get into what I will call the Nirvana arc. Expect Raven's demons, big battles, and a whole new plan I created specifically for the light. Read and review please. Darkness. It is the very first thing she feels as she begins to adjust to this strange place she finds herself. An encompassing darkness so thick that is almost tangible. Her senses begin to come to life, expanding her awareness.
No smell, no sounds, nothing. Her eyes begin to adjust, the last of her senses to come online in this void. It feels like one. Regardless of whatever this place is, as her eyes open, she comes to the realization that what she had first felt was not quite accurate.
Her vision is filled with an unending vista. a curtain of darkness randomly interspersed with tiny spots of brilliant light. At some points, the lights are clustered thickly, seeming almost like one large light source, while others are vast swaths of darkness broken up by just one or two of the tiny lights. It's oddly beautiful, isn't it? She whirls around and comes face to face with a startling vision. A beautiful young woman with flowing, ivory hair and eyes a brilliant shade of violet, dressed in a regal-looking kimono, kneels before her sitting in seiza, her mind supplies, smiling serenely. "You're the one that just spoke," she means for it to come out as a statement but fails miserably. It sounds like the question of a scared child. The strange woman simply arcs an eyebrow. "Do you see anyone else here?" Fighting valiantly to rein in her emotions, she responds, "I merely sought to confirm." Inwardly, she flinches, realizing that, in her anxiety, she has slipped into her old manner of speech. If the strange woman notices, she says nothing of it, instead prodding her with her next question. "And now that you have my curiosity is sated," she lies smoothly, her facade changing to conceal her thoughts and feelings. In more mundane terms, her poker face was on. The woman simply laughs. "You can't lie to me, my dear. I know how desperately you want to understand what this place is, what is happening, and, most of all, I know just how desperately you wish to know exactly who you are." The poker face shatters. How does this woman know? "Exactly what you were thinking." The woman laughs again, her eyes twinkling with mirth. She isn't so much laughing at her as she is laughing at the fact that she knows something that isn't common knowledge yet. "Let me ask you something. Since you gained awareness in here, have you taken a moment to simply look at yourself?" The question strikes her like a lightning bolt and sends her mind screaming through the memories of the moments since she had awoken in this absurd place. The realization strikes even harder. She hasn't looked at herself since she first gained awareness. She had been mesmerized by the chaotic beauty of this strange place, then struck by the beauty of the woman before her, and had then engaged in the discussion that had gotten her to where she currently was, but she had not, at any point, actually taken the time to look at herself. "Well, go on then." The woman smiles indulgently, like a parent to a hesitant child at Christmas. "Have a look. Go on, then, open up your gifts." She doesn't hesitate. And then, she wishes she had. No, she wishes she hadn't listened in the first place. "What sort of twisted game are you playing at?" she asks coolly, though her insides are a slushy mix of anger, denial, and fear. The woman simply laughs again, not quite mocking but certainly not innocent. "You're afraid, aren't you? Beneath all the denial and the rage, you're afraid. And you can't quite tell why, can you?" The anger, the denial, and the fear all grow higher and higher pitches, melting as they grow until it takes just about all of her mental discipline to force them down. Her words, when she is able to speak, come out as a harsh hiss escaping through clenched teeth. "Shut. I'll tell you." The woman cuts her off with that damnable smile still on her lips. "You and I, we are the same being." The chain binding her emotions snap like thread over a fire. "Stop lying," she roars angrily, striding forward, legs hampered by the same kimono the woman wears, hands lifted in anger and her face the same as that of the woman contorted in a mask of fury. "Stop lying. We are not the same being and we can never be the same." Her raging words are cut off when she suddenly finds herself seated in seiza, right opposite the woman. They are mere feet away, 3 feet at most, yet, when she tries to move, she finds that her own body is casually ignoring her commands. "To be honest, I suppose you are right." The woman shrugs casually like nothing out of place has happened. "We aren't quite the same being." A flash of vindication runs through her upon hearing this. A slight, knowing smile is the only warning she has. "The truth of it is this. I am an aspect of you, growing inside of you for quite a while now, but only just being born." Her mind rails at this revelation, deeming it impossible. "Impossible? Well then, allow me to present some evidence to support my case." Then, the woman's right arm stretched out, well beyond human capabilities, expanding as it went, twisting past the tiny spots of light as it went onward, only to snap back into place so fast she felt it had only been a hallucination. Then, the woman stretched her hand toward her and her mind quailed in fear. The last thing she noticed was that, as it flew past her temple, the woman's curved palm held a tiny point of light. Gotham hours earlier. For the first time since their arrival on this earth, Naruto found himself wishing he'd simply not done anything during the war. "Maybe if I had done that, I wouldn't be in this mess." "Kagaya, come on. We've been at this for close to 3 hours now and we haven't gotten anywhere yet," he pleaded as they walked through one of the less busy areas of the docks. "We're headed toward the mountain and I feel we should get this out of our way before we have to meet up with the others." The princess just kept strolling on, moving as though she had not a care in the world. "Is that what you feel? Well, I'm glad that you're finally sharing your feelings and opinions." Even though the sarcasm in the reply was biting, Naruto took it as a win. At least now he had a starting point, of sorts. He had to keep looking for positives, no matter how hard, because he really didn't want to get upset at her. "Is that what this is about? Am I not telling you before I made my decision?" "No, I'm upset because you hogged all the pillows last night. We don't even sleep in the same room. He replied exasperatedly, as the mental exhaustion began to set in and wear his control down. Besides, like I told you, letting Pamela leave was a spur-of-the-moment sort of thing, you know, those kinds of decisions that can only be made in the moment. You understand that, don't you? No, Naruto, she snapped back, her own temper boiling over. She's a top-class villain in this world and you simply let her go on a whim? Hey, some of my best decisions were made on a whim. And that's the problem, Kagaya shot back. Did you even spend a moment to think of the dangers of sending a verified eco-terrorist right back into the world? She has nothing to return to. No one to return to? You've essentially set off a loose cannon? Even as his anger ripped past every mental block he'd put in place, Naruto experienced a moment of clarity just long enough for him to activate the localized silencing seal he'd engraved into the back of the wristband he wore. Maybe if you had listened to me even once you would know that she bought the old apartment her mom stayed in as a single lady. Maybe if you had listened you would know that I never took off the modified dampening seal I left on her. If you had listened, you would know that I have locator seals on her every limb.
But you haven't listened. Not even once since you showed up today have you even attempted to listen to a word I've said.
You took the decision without my input. The harsh bark of laughter that ripped out of the blonde's mouth was every bit as cynically sarcastic as he felt at that moment. And you haven't? If I recall decision that set us on the path we're currently treading. You decided to tell Batman that I was your bodyguard, passing yourself as some high and mighty, innocent princess that was victimized by some shadowy entity. I did that to give us a cover story, she yelled back angrily even as her eyes grew misty. Somewhere deep inside his subconscious, a part of Naruto noticed it and felt vindicated though his conscious self didn't notice. And I backed up your decision, didn't I? Am I not still backing it even now? Have I ever given you any trouble over it? When she didn't answer, he pushed forward. So why the hell does it matter so much to you that I tender every decision before you? For God's sake, Kagaya. Pamela is essentially this world's version of you. Like hell she is. Oh really? The blonde arched a disbelieving eyebrow upon hearing that. Young girl desperate to change the world as she knows it comes into contact with power. It gets to her head and she nearly destroys the same thing she's fighting for. Does that ring a bell? It did. And, judging by the fact that she wouldn't look him in the eye, the Uzumaki guessed that she had come to a similar conclusion at some point and had merely glossed it over. He felt not a whit of regret in pointing it out. So it had occurred to you too and you couldn't cut her some slack? With a sigh of disappointment, he turned away from her and started walking away, leaving her behind before he stopped. A partnership of any sort requires a certain degree of trust, Kagaya. You would do well to remember that.
With his piece said, he walked ahead to the access point for the Zeta Tube. Mount Justice. When Kagaya finally walked through the Zeta Tube, she met with a wall of quiet that felt at odds with the mountain considering that it was just an hour past noon.
Too quiet, huh? Cyborg smiled at her as he clunked in, carrying a stack of documents. How could you tell? She asked as she moved over and offered to help him with it. Nah thanks, I'm good. The mecha human waved her off and walked over to the computer console. As for how I could tell, well you pretty much had the question sketched on her face. Plus, Naruto noticed the same thing a few minutes ago. It took her actively schooling her features to hide the wince that threatened to mar the smile she'd plastered on. Let me guess, Wally isn't here yet?
Nope. Plus, Robin's not here, Connor has a guest, Megan dragged Raven to learn her way around a kitchen and Donna and Artemis are sparring with Calder.
Ah, our Atlantean ambassador's back, she commented, resting on the table as he began scanning the documents. How is he? He's fine. Black Manta's failed heist siege was broken 3 days ago and the trident was returned to the King of Atlantis. Cyborg replied. He returned yesterday with Captain Holly Short, though the captain's gone now, and apologized to the team for his bout of indecision. That was actually what led to the par going on right now. Wanna watch? Please. The mecha human didn't verbally respond. He just turned on another monitor and diverted the feed to it. Apparently, Donna was still a tad pissed at him for last week and wanted to verify the sincerity of his words. And Artemis? The league member snorted. She was bored.
Of course she was cut off abruptly as Naruto shot into the room like a bullet, a stormy expression on his features and muttering what sounded like a vile string of curses.
Cyborg, please take me off the active duty missions for a while. My informant just got word to me that there's a plot for the head of Queen Perdita of Vlatava. Cyborg's response was instantaneous as he started trawling through the internet to find any details of such. In the meantime, Kagaya found it difficult to look at him though. In his rage, he didn't seem to notice. I haven't found anything yet but I'll keep looking. Leave a link open here so I can send anything I find over. Got it. If I have to go dark I'll let you know. The shinobi nodded before heading to the Zeta Tube.
He never noticed Kagaya's apologetic glance. A week ago, satellites picked a burst of exotic energy that lasted for exactly 2 minutes 16 seconds, somewhere in the Belian wilderness. Batman stated as he pulled up the satellite imagery and the energy readings. The readings matched nothing ever detected on Earth, but since it was just a single, randomly placed event, the Atom and I felt it was not an urgent matter and so we felt we could analyze it at our leisure. I'm guessing that it has become urgent. Wally muttered before being silenced by Artemis' elbow to his side. 4 days ago, the readings were picked up again, this time lasting longer and coming in a random pattern. The dark night continued. Our analysis moved to top priority. Neither of us were able to identify the energy signature until Cyborg took a look at them. The first thing that stuck out to me was that their extra-dimensional nature. The mecha human continued, picking up where the bat had stopped. They looked very much like something I'd seen before and, a few minutes of analysis later, I understood why. They were apocalyptian. Robin guessed. Close. Cyborg replied as he pulled up a rendering of 2 energy patterns. But what the satellites picked up wasn't apocalyptian. According to my databanks, it is from New Genesis, a second world in the dimension Darkseid resides in.
For the first time since his return earlier in the week, Calder frowned. A possible invasion? While the residents of New Genesis seem to be downright peaceful compared to their counterparts, we aren't ruling out the possibility that we could be registering the arrival of a scouting group. Batman continued. As such, we'll need you to look this. Scout the scouts. Superboy grunted, a bit disgruntled that the mission had disrupted his time with the first visitor he'd ever had who actually came solely to see him. Why is this just coming up now?
Belia is not exactly a friendly country to the concept of heroes, particularly the Justice League. Kagaya spoke up. And while their queen certainly doesn't seem to hate the League, she has expressed her dislike for the autonomy of the League and humanity's seeming decision to just grant them access to any location in the name of fighting for justice.
Precisely. Batman nodded. However, while the League is well recognized, this team isn't, and as such you can infiltrate the location swiftly, investigate and head out just as quickly. The Queen began a 2-week diplomatic tour 2 days ago. Cyborg picked up again. We're giving you 24 hours to get in there and make your preliminary findings before we decide if you should stay a bit longer. Sensing that the briefing was done, Calder turned to his team and told them to prepare for, at the very least, a 48-hour mission, and to meet in the hangar within 20 minutes.
I noticed that Naruto wasn't present during the mission briefing.
Good eye. She replied as she tested the keenness of the twin daggers that said blonde shinobi had given her as a part of her shard outfit. Seeing that they wouldn't require sharpening, she tucked them away into their sheaths and picked up her bracers. Do you need anything else? Batman loomed in the doorway, the lighting of the room which he had dulled as she prepared, adding a sense of dread to him that would have frightened a lesser person. He had timed his arrival to ensure that while he didn't walk in on her as she got into the skin-tight bodysuit that she wore beneath the armor of her costume, he would still have sufficient time to talk to her. Where is he? Off doing something important, I expect. She shrugged, sounding every bit as unimpressed by his intimidation act as she felt. Is there a problem? He should be here for this mission, prior engagement. Being a member of this team doesn't mean much. She cut him off mid-sentence. While we did choose to join this team of yours, you would do well to remember that we gave certain conditions, but Ma-ion is multiple eyes in this case, digital and organic, and we get to live our lives as we so choose. His presence is not an absolute requirement for this mission. You cannot possibly expect me to believe that, had we never shown up, you would not send the team out on this mission. You would still require the information you do now, and you would still be constrained by the very same reasons. She countered instantly as she finished her preparations, leaving only her mask off. At the moment, Naruto is busy and cannot pander to your whims. This situation may very well repeat itself in the foreseeable future, and if you feel that you cannot deal with it, then you should feel free to let us leave. With her piece said, she marched right past him and into the hallway before pausing and glancing back. If you must know, however, he left to check up on rumors that a hit had been placed on the Queen of Vlatava. Perhaps you should have asked Cyborg before charging an uninformed. Unknown location, she reels as the memories bloom in her mind, filling up empty spaces yet leaving many more holes starkly void. I am Kagaya? She sounds uncertain, piecing together details of her own identity through the few glimpses she has just seen. Otsutsuki Kagaya, yes. The strange woman smiles benignly, making no move to help her twin. Relax. The memories will filter in steadily and the holes will fill up. She tries to obey, tries to slip into the meditative state that she's always been able to fall into so easily. Her father had always commended her on that, her ability to calm her mind, relax and let the possibilities flow. It was the one thing she was better at than the man in question, yet the prized skill eluded her now. What is going on? She could barely manage the short question through the pounding haze that surrounded her head. Not quite long after you landed, Calder opted for a telepathic link instead of an electronic communication system. McGann hooked your mind up to that of the rest of the team, and the instant that was in place, the mission began in earnest. The stranger seems content to not help as the pounding continues. Absently, Kagaya notes that the stars almost seem to be moving, and every once in a while, she would catch a glimpse of a pattern she could identify. Soon enough, Raven and McGann, who had flown ahead for aerial reconnaissance, returned with the news. A strange compound was up ahead with many scientist types scurrying about. A plan was swiftly crafted for 1 or 2 people to sneak in, the 2 being Raven. due to a hybrid disillusionment charm she spoke of, and Megan for her natural abilities. The rest of the team fanned out until the compound was surrounded for ease of access should either infiltrate or require quick rescue. What happened? Kaguya asks as the pounding begins to dull. To the team, what happened to them? The infiltrators were caught. There was a powerful telepath inside the building and he found dear Megan almost as soon as she set foot into the compound. She instantly tried to protect the rest of the team, but her foe was, I would say, too skilled. More of a sledgehammer versus a surgical blade thing. She tried to escape with Raven, to return to the rest of the team, but she barely got past the compound when she cried out. The telepath had reached into her mind, invaded it. Actually, the poor girl, and sent what felt like an ultra-precise bolt of raw power into the connection holding the team together. It, for all intents and purposes, should have fried your minds, but the sheer density of Megan's mental powers helped cushion the impact. What else? She demands. She can sense that the entity before her is withholding something from her. You said that her powers helped to cushion the impact, which means there was an impact. I need to know. Pick that up, didn't you? Shows that your mind's finally clearing up. Though that's no surprise seeing that you now recall most of these patterns. The entity smiles as it gestures toward the specks of light that Kaguya now notices have arranged themselves into easily recognizable patterns. As to your question, the psychic bolt should have ripped away your individual identities, leaving only blank slates for whoever was running the operation to use as they saw fit. Instead, the rest of the team lost their memories of the past 6 months. Something about that statement strikes Kaguya the wrong way. She has just recalled a memory of, if the entity before her was sincere, the events leading to where she was now. In fact, now that her mind is on it, she recalls, with perfect clarity, just who she is as well as each and every one of her memories, from her childhood to her teens. Her decision to consume the fruit of the Shinju and her year of mental captivity. She remembers everything. So why? I did say, the rest of the team, the entity answers the as yet unspoken question. Your mind, though, was affected quite differently. By this point, Kaguya is on the verge of pulling her hair out by the roots. Teeth clenched together tightly, she manages to grind out her question. What exactly happened to me? The psychic bolt stripped your consciousness from your body, and so, in the physical world, your body is currently comatose. The entity states factually before smiling again. You are, as it stands, in your own head. What, and you're supposed to be my conscience? She asks with as much snark as she can inject into the question because, as much as she wants to deny the mere concept that the entity has just propounded, Kaguya suspects, deep inside her, that nothing she has heard is a lie. For the first time since her awakening, the entity rises out of the cross-legged seating position it had taken and turns away from her. Without a word, the entity simply walks away. Armed as she is with the knowledge that she is currently stuck in her own mind, Kaguya suspects that the entity walking away is her best shot at getting out of here, so she follows it, walking a step to the right and 2 steps behind it. Exactly where Naruto stands when we're upholding the ruse. She noted absently, a tiny pang seizing her heart as she inadvertently recalls their last one-on-one conversation. Why did you choose to eat the fruit? The question snaps her out of her fugue and she notices with a start that the void-like expanse has been replaced by a familiar hallway with rice sheet walls and mahogany floor paneling. As they stop in front of an open archway, she realizes that this is her childhood home. And in the room, engaged in a heated conversation, stands her father and a slightly younger version of herself. Father, please. This may just be the way to heal Toneri and end the wars forever. Isn't that what you want? Well, the entity prods quietly as the conversation in the room continues. You had no evidence that the fruit from the Shinju would grant you the power to do as you wished. The evidence was. No answer comes to mind. It is a question that she has never truly stopped to think about. Why exactly did she think that the fruit was the answer? Try it, Kaguya, and I will have you locked away in a padded room, one without windows, and I will claim that your mind has been broken by your brother's sudden decline in health.
Didn't you ever wonder why father was ready and willing to go to such lengths to stop you? If you look through our memories, you will find out that this was the only time that he threatened us with a punishment.
She does not need to. Once again, Kaguya knows that the entity is right. Her father had always been extremely proud of her, often bragging to her uncle of how much she took all of the best features of her parents. She cannot say a word. What exactly made you believe that feasting on the fruit in its raw form would grant you the power to heal Toneri-kun? Did you even consider the fact that such a sudden influx of power could kill you? Did you stop to wonder how Toneri-kun would have felt if you had died up there? Did you consider health? The questions keep on coming, an endless barrage of needle-sharp pricks that inexorably tear down her mental barriers. Kaguya, on a level, accepts the fact that this could be an attack on her mind for nefarious purposes. The entity itself has already told her that her mind was subjected to a psychic assault, and she, more than most people, understands that the best kinds of lies are those with a core of truth. But in here, within this void-like space she finds herself right now, stripped off all but her very identity and staring at this entity before her, she knows. She's looking at the part of herself that she never wanted to confront. A melancholic look falls upon the entity's visage, her own visage, and the woman nods slowly. I see that you finally understand. A harsh look comes upon Kaguya's features. I understand that my mind is under assault from something out there. I understand that my body is currently lying somewhere, possibly subject to torture. I understand that, for all I know, I could be stuck far down in my own subconscious and you're here to try to pull information from my mind. Human nature is, inherently, stubborn. Should a person bury a thought, memory or a fragment of their own personality, their own mind does everything it can to keep it buried. Not even the provision of solid evidence would keep the mind from denying such. Kaguya, even though she understands this, is no more exempt than a lion is exempt from eating meat. The entity doesn't reply immediately, choosing instead to stare intently at her. The gaze pierces her more thoroughly than any bladed weapon can, but it only lasts for a moment before it is broken off. As I expected. The entity frowns sadly. You're too stubborn to face the root of our problems, and in doing so you subject us to so much pain. You don't know me, Kaguya finds herself snarling in response, unwilling to accept the truth before her. For all I know, you're just a figment of someone else's thoughts. The look of sadness on the entity's features begin to wear off, slowly but surely replaced by one of bitter anger bordering on outright hatred. I don't know you, I don't know you. Have you ever stopped to wonder just why you weren't driven insane by the eons we spent trapped within the Shiju's mind? Have you never once tried to understand just why you recovered so swiftly from the aftereffects of the Shiju's possession of your mind? Of course you haven't. You know nothing. You are so arrogant, self-centered and set in your ways that you never once accepted the questions that I asked you. You ran from them because you could never bear the guilt of accepting the catastrophe that you brought about. Everything I did for my brother, Kaguya yells in response. Toneri-kun was my everything, and if you knew me half as well as you claim, then you'd know that. The entity's response was a laugh of such biting scorn that it feels almost like a physical blow. Maybe in the beginning, I won't fault you for that, but it ceased to be about Toneri-kun the moment father rejected your idea. It became, in your twisted arrogance, your petulant desire to prove yourself right. After all, if you did it all for Toneri-kun, then when did it become a desire to bring peace to the world? When did it become a desire to rule? Why didn't you just stop at saving Toneri-kun? Maybe we wouldn't be in this mess if you had. The Shiju already had my mind by then. Stop hiding behind that thing's influence. The memory of her childhood home shakes terribly the roar of her repressed self. Stop hiding, and for the love of everything that we hold dear, stop lying to yourself. The Shiju was little more than a child when it first entered our mind. You could have made it see reason. Barring that, you should have fought it. You could have. But you did nothing. The shaking has grown in magnitude, now so powerful that cracks appear in the hallway and portions of the structure begin to fall away, leaving gaping holes that lead to the endless void. Have you ever wondered just how the Shinju became the egotistical, possessive, vindictive, vengeful being that nearly destroyed our home and our world? I'll give you a hint. Our mind was the first it ever encountered, and you were the one in control. Face the facts, Kaguya. More than the Shinju and its influence, more than your stupid belief that, if father had listened, none of this would have happened, more than any of that, you are the root of our problems. Your inability to accept your flaws and learn from them put us here. By this point, the hallway was completely gone, replaced by the void, and her repressed self is a gasping, wild-eyed mess. None of that matters though. For the first time ever, Kaguya's stubborn nature lays in shards. The shaking has stopped, and, as Kaguya comes to terms with all that has been shoved right into her face, her repressed self calms down as well, and the hateful look she once had now returns to the sad visage she first bore. You're just too stubborn, always thinking you know what's best, and you're doing it again. The void begins to spiral, twisting as though being forced down a drain, and Kaguya can sense what is happening. She's waking up. And her repressed self knows it. TCH. I don't even have enough time to knock into your head just how much of an ass you've been to him. Kaguya doesn't have to ask to know the person being referred to. He's had our back through everything. He shouldn't be helping us, shouldn't be supporting us, but he is. With a bitter sigh, the split persona turns away from Kaguya, though not quickly enough to prevent the princess from seeing the sheen of tears in her eyes, nor is she composed enough to hide the flash of envy from stealing across her face as her skin begins to glow with hairline fractures. You have no idea how lucky you are. I know he has his flaws. He doesn't seem conventionally intelligent. He's too goofy. He enjoys pranking way too much, and his love for that congealed abomination and his utterly atrocious manners when he's consuming it. Both selves shudder at the thought. Look, he's not perfect, but he has his own strengths. He has his own form of wisdom. He's loyal. He chose to follow your lead when you asked him to pose as your bodyguard, so why can't you do the same now that he needs your trust? Things don't always work how we want them to, but when friends ask for support, we should give it to them. By this point, all Kaguya can see in the vast expanse of white light is the silhouette of herself, and even that fades away until nothing remains. Her eyes snap open even as her body lurches off the sandy floor of the desert. Her heart's beating a fast-paced staccato in her chest, and her ears are filled with a ringing buzz. As she calms down and returns to her senses, she realizes that the buzzing in her ears is actually the voice of a desperate-sounding robin. "Ard, come in, Shard. Damn it, please answer." Lifting a hand to her ear, she activates the receiver and acknowledges the boy's desperate cries. "Shard, oh thank God. I need you to move in a straight line southeast of your current location, Aqualad." She doesn't wait to hear the rest before she gets her bearings and takes off. Taking on a mission into the desert had been a great risk for the Atlantean. And that was when the mission called for a quick nighttime reconnaissance.
Yet, even as she speeds over the dunes as fast as she can move in her current state, she can't quite get her mind off the last words her split persona had said before she fully regained consciousness.
"And I know you see him as more than just a friend. Washington, D.C., you're sure your old friend Naja won't mind the slight alteration to the plan? I see no reason for the Count to mind." Vandal shrugged as he refilled his glass.
While the original arrangement was for the Queen to be assassinated on foreign soil, the poisoning during her homecoming speech works out better in the long run. We get to keep tabs on her progress now that she's been moved to, and the blame can be pinned on the rebels back home, thus reducing any suspicions of foul play on the Count's part. After all, very few in Vlatava could have afforded to put such a hefty bounty on the Queen's head, and he certainly tops that chart.
"So, you got her out of the way, got a new pawn, and had Queenie throw a wrench in the passage of the UN's Justice League Charter." Clarion counted off. Not bad for a day's work, especially since the first two could have been ruined by the interference of the Maelstrom. The last word uttered brought a dark scowl to the immortal's features. He's proving to be quite the nuisance to our plans, and the brain is still incapable of calculating his peak capabilities.
"We'll figure something out." For the several minutes after that, the two men stood in the silence, not a word uttered between them. Neither man flinched at the thud of a large object striking the ground behind them, both calmly sipping their wines like one of the deadliest men in the world wasn't standing fully armed just a scant few feet behind him.
"You took your time getting here, Manta," Savage commented as he watched the city lights far beneath his perch. "There was no need for me to rush." The assassin shrugged casually. "My missions in Atlantis were all completed and in good time too. I took the extra hours to look into a few investments of mine." "Business doing good?" Clarion asked with a knowing smile on his face, which Black Manta returned tenfold. "Business is doing excellently. As is to be expected," Savage added as he finally turned and rested his eyes on the object Black Manta just delivered. "Ah. Blood of the last in Toby. For all my planning, I must say that Cabaline's find was most fortuitous for our plans."
"You know, I still don't get just why the tech whiz's wife's discovery warranted such a tangential move, Vandy." Clarion groused as he drained the dregs of his wine. "I mean, it's just a bloody big starfish."
Resting a hand on the cylinder in an almost caring manner, a rumble of laughter bubbled up the immortal's throat. "I tend to forge that, for all your tremendous lifespan, you haven't always kept an eye on the earth. You missed quite a lot of fun things, Clarion, chaotic things that would have set even your twisted heart jumping." "Okay, you sly old man, now even I'm interested," Meta said, crossing his hands over his chest. "Let's hear it." A nostalgic smile stole across the scarred immortal's face as he closed his eyes. The Nervit, an ancient civilization that had created technological marvels in an age where the ancient Sumerians were just working on their languages, were vastly skilled in both the sciences and magics. They constantly sought to push the very boundaries of all that they knew until they could know no more of a subject. In time, they grew arrogant and sought to challenge powers that should simply have been left to be. They attacked the fates, Clarion cried in joyful wonder. "Oh boy, do I remember hearing about that." Manta arched an eyebrow in disbelief. "Only hearing about it?" Clarion's response was a dismissive wave of the hand. "I was off sowing chaos somewhere else and I missed the assault. Nabu and his narcs were so pissed off that a bunch of humans got them that they wiped the whole civilization out and initiated the whole Helmet of Fate thing to keep tabs on humans. Oh but Vandy, you can't stop now, keep the good stuff coming." With an amused grin of his own, Savage acquiesced. "While I won't tell you of the actual assault, I can tell you that they nearly brought the Lords of Order to their knees with two tools. The first was a powerful weapon called Nirvana." Manta supplied as certain details the immortal had spoken of in times past finally coalesced into a coherent image. Indeed. The second, however, was a magically cultivated biological weapon whose base form was found in a creature they called Entobi. This liquid, when injected into a being's bloodstream, greatly increased their susceptibility to mental manipulation. Coupled with the effects of Nirvana. The immortal laughed again. "Well, let's just say that the Lords of Order weren't quite ready when their proxies returned and tried to kill them." Manta whistled softly. "Sounds like some pretty damn potent stuff. I'm guessing you found the recipe for recreating that liquid? I wouldn't be a good antiques collector if I didn't have some really old and forgotten items in my cache now, would I?" The dark-skinned mercenary smirked back at the immortal. "I suppose you wouldn't. Anyhow, I'll head out now. Investments don't tend to themselves very well. By the way, Manta flicked a small black cube toward the immortal. The Kraken's all yours. Good. With that word of dismissal, Manta walked away. You've been awfully quiet all this while. I finally remembered just where I'd encountered that chaotic energy I sensed around the children a few weeks ago. Clarion replied with a slow, cruel grin twisting his features. Remember what I said I was doing when your favorite civilization challenged Nabu's twats? Sowing discord and reaping chaos. Yeah, well, all that chaos multiplied in magnitudes when he arrived. The emphasis the Master of Chaos had put into that single word had piqued the immortal's interest. Who? Trigon, the general of Horvath's armies. Now it was the Master of Chaos' turn to throw his head back in nostalgia. That four-eyed freak was an absolute monster, pillaging worlds and annexing them for his father's kingdom. We had one hell of a time together. Well, after I'd convinced him that I wasn't an enemy and didn't give two shits about actually ruling the worlds we conquered. So the energy you felt? Definitely Trigon. Clarion confirmed readily. He took over from old man Horvath when the old fool got complacent some millenniums back. I'd heard that he was having a few kitty issues a few years back. And you think you can get him on our side? The Master of Chaos burst into laughter. Oh Vandy, you crack me up sometimes. He gasped out between laughs. Trigon is not someone you want to have on your side unless you're like me and care more about chaos. He's a conqueror, he thrives on pillaging worlds. Oh no, I don't want him on your side. This whole light business is too much fun to ruin now. No, I'm gonna tell him exactly what he wants to know and get him to come here on his own. Then the League will be too occupied dealing with him and we can sow a few more seeds of discord. Plus, when he inevitably fails, he'd still owe me a favor for helping him out. Savage didn't reply immediately, choosing instead to mull over the entity's words. Once again he was reminded that though they were working together, each and every single member of the Light had a personal agenda of their own, agendas that could, in the future, set them against one another. It was quite the task to keep the scales balanced between them as it was, and even his age-wizened wisdom often found itself being tasked to the limits keeping things together. As for the idea Clarion had just proposed, can you ensure that Trigon's attack will fail? The Master of Chaos just made a rudely dismissive sound. Easily. Heck, I won't even have to be there for him to fail. In that case, proceed with your plan. I'll run it by the rest of us at the next meeting. And done. This chapter is my way of not rehashing the episode while also sticking to the spirit of the episode. The first part of the chapter was the main focus of the chapter. As you might have noticed, Kaguya's repressed self isn't all about hate and anger. The RS is the embodiment of Kaguya's guilt and her fears, particularly those pertaining to her eating the fruit of the Shinju. The questions that would have led to a guilt-ridden conscience and the subsequent guilt were all loaded up and dumped into a box of repression. You'll also notice that there was no clear resolution to the confrontation. That was done on purpose. There's simply no way years of repressed guilt add up in a single moment. Nah. However, now that Kaguya is aware of her primary flaws, maybe she'll work on them, we'll see. To those seeking conflict between the League and Naruto, it started a while back. Soup's having issues with the presence of killers on the team. In the last chapter we saw Naruto tackle Bats over the no-killing issue, and now we see Kaguya taking offense at Bats' controlling behavior. Well, I think that's enough for now. Mount Justice. Seated on his bed in preparation for the two-man mission the Dark Knight had just briefed them about, Connor gazed at the crystal in his hand. A long, thin pentagonal prism that tapered down to a point at its opposite end, the crystal bore a symbol that had, in the past decade, come to be synonymous with the word hope. It was a cheap crystal replica of Supergirl's access key to the famed Fortress of Solitude. Flashback, here, I'd like you to have this. Supergirl smiled as she presented the crystal to him. I know it's not the original, but I think you should have it anyway. It'll act as a reminder that you're never alone. Gently taking the object from the blonde, Connor turned it over in his hand until he noticed the symbol engraved into the flat head. A wave of shame swept over him as he was again reminded that while he bore the symbol, he couldn't claim to understand what it meant. Somehow, the young woman beside him noticed his unease and, guessing that it had something to do with the little gift she'd just given him, she slung an arm around his shoulders and turned his head until he was watching the sunset. I'm guessing you've heard of the Fortress of Solitude? When he nodded his assent, she continued, well, while it's Superman's little hideaway, he gave me access to the fortress a while back when it felt like the world was crushing me in. And while I know I can't grant you access there yet since it's not really my place, I feel like you deserve to bear the symbol of the House of L. I know you still have a few issues with yourself, Connor, but I trust you. You weren't obligated to help Robin and the rest of your friends back at the labs, but you did because you have a good heart. You had no duty to upholding the character that the shield represents, yet you did. And you're still doing it because you have a heart of gold. The symbol of the House of L has always ever stood for hope, and you have continued to follow in that line by your own choice. You deserve it, Connor, and I'm happy to be related to you. The young teen had turned his head away from the blonde to hide the bittersweet tears that found their way past his eyelids. He knew that he had come a long way from the rage-filled, Bitter teen that he had been when he'd first joined the team, but hearing this from a woman that was, for all intents and purposes, an aunt, felt like a tremendous achievement to him. Yet again the blonde read him perfectly and was ready to support him. Now I know that gaining Superman's acknowledgement probably means the world to you, but my cousin, our last living relative, is nothing if not incredibly stubborn. To be fair to him, I've had a few people say that stubbornness might just be a Kryptonian trait, so you really shouldn't be surprised if a few people call you stubborn too. The two shared a laugh at that before she continued. We once had a falling out because I took on a challenge that he felt was too much for me. He didn't say a word to me for months until I ended up pulling him out of a tight spot, and then he realized that maybe I wasn't so fragile. My point is that Superman tends to be too stubborn to accept certain things until they're literally shoved into his face. She put a hand to his cheek and turned his face until their eyes locked. But I'm absolutely certain that he will come around even if I have to drag him to it. Flashback end. The trust that Supergirl had put in him combined with his time with Naruto spent learning how to see himself as a human in the team's treatment of him as a regular teen, albeit an inhumanly strong and durable one, had given Connor such confidence that, for the first time since he'd opened his eyes within the Sumdac pod, he felt whole. As it stood now, he wasn't living to earn Superman's acknowledgement anymore. Now he just wanted to make his family proud of him. If Superman ever came to be counted among that group, then so be it. Connor? McGann's shy voice broke him from his thoughts, and he turned to the girl that had, over the time, become more to him than the annoyance he'd first seen her as. We're ready to go. She'd already taken the guise of Tuppence Terror, one half of the fraternal twins that they would be taking the place of for their mission. His transformation would take place on the flight over to Louisiana. Let's go. Calder stood in the midst of 3 open holoscreens, Black Canary by his side, as he awaited word from the McGann and Superboy in Louisiana.
Having been briefed alongside Naruto and the two in question, he knew that they should have arrived at the warehouse about 15 minutes ago via Zeta Tube, allowing room for Connor's wardrobe to be fitted onto the young man as well as for Superman and Martian Manhunter to finalize the capture of the Terror Twins, and he was clearing communication channels and feeding the system some of Robin's encryption programs to keep the lines safe while awaiting a check-in from the two.
Right on cue, McGann radioed in. Miss Martian to Aqualad. Are you there, Aqualad? The young Atlantean let out a sigh of relief that he hadn't realized he was holding in. This is Aqualad. We arrived 16 minutes ago and have encountered no deviations from the plan. Superboy just finished changing. Even though they were thousands of miles away, Calder could have sworn that he had detected a faint hint of amusement over the comms. Too bad this was a live mission. Good to know. You'll be leaving soon as I get what we need from Tuppence. Alright then, I'll be standing by. Aqualad out. Miss Martian out. With that, the hollow screen tracking their conversation went still. So how well do you think they'll do? Canary asked as she watched the young Atlantean confirm the strength of the multi-step connection linking him through the watchtower to the bioship. I believe my friends will do excellently, he replied. McGann is capable of adapting to situations as they come, and Connor has become much calmer and is less likely to make impetuous moves. Supergirl's visit was most helpful with that. I'm glad to see that he's getting more and more confident. Canary smiled, thinking back to the angry and insecure teen the young Kryptonian was when they had first met. Hopefully she can wear her cousin down as well. However, the conversation would have gone. It was stalled when Naruto walked over to them. They've begun? Calder nodded once. You just missed McGann's call. The blonde shinobi swore in his native language. I wanted to talk to Connor before they began. Guessing the reason for the blonde's concern, Canary placed a hand on his shoulder. Don't worry, from what McGann said, he doesn't seem particularly bothered by the presence of Superman. Calder thinks it has something to do with Supergirl's visit. As the heroine spoke, she could feel the muscles beneath his shoulders relax bit by bit until all the tension drained from him. For all his talk about being dedicated to Kagaya, he really does care about them. Yeah, I can definitely see that happening. The shinobi sighed. For someone whose self-esteem issues stem from a desire to belong, having someone like Supergirl acknowledge him would definitely be a tremendous boost to his confidence. It certainly seems that way. Calder agreed. Well then, Calder, if you don't mind, I'd like to borrow our beautiful teacher for a few moments. Not a problem, my friend. The Atlantean nodded and turned his attention onto the holoscreen tracking the movement of the bioship while the two blondes walked over to the unoccupied main computer hub. It was one of the few times the hub was left unmanned, this time caused by Canary, who had finally convinced the usual occupant to try mending his frayed relationship with his father. So, what was so important that you felt you had to slip in that little bit of flattery into your request just now? Canary asked with a touch of amusement. Are you saying that you're not beautiful? The shinobi was, of course, ready wit. Hitting on your teacher is frowned on, young man, particularly when she's already spoken for. The Uzumaki's features took on an appropriately somber and chastised look with his eyes cast toward the ground. I'm sorry, sensei, I'll remember to never compliment you again. Canary just laughed and punched the younger man's shoulder lightly. You're impossible. I know. Naruto replied, still sounding somber. It's one of my more annoying traits, or so I'm told. I'm pretty sure you didn't call me here just to remind me what a smartass you are, Blondie. She replied, her smile still very much on her face. Sorry, Naruto smiled back, finally breaking out of character, but it's fun teasing you. Now that the fun was over, the shinobi turned to the computer and began punching in a series of commands even as his demeanor became more serious. I wonder what's come up. He's not in what I've come to dub mission mode, but he's definitely not joking anymore. The heroine wondered as she watched him scroll through a list until he highlighted a program simply labeled, Accords. I've been following the series of events following the proposal of the Justice League Charter and the subsequent negation of the passage of the Charter. The blonde stated as he ran the program. A few seconds later, 6 windows opened, all showing live feeds of the Real Asian Peace Summit holding in Taipei. Some of the leads I obtained pointed me toward a possible connection between the negation of the Charter and the ongoing summit. To be honest, Canary found herself wondering what kind of lead would have resulted in the direction he was currently pointed, but she decided to say nothing yet, trusting that he was as stable as he'd promised following the attack on the Queen of Vlatava. Though he'd promised to unearth the perpetrators of the crime and bring them in, he had also assured her that it was not a vendetta on his part. He simply wanted to find the people that had nearly killed the young queen. She hoped it was so. Just as the presenter launched into a spiel detailing the negation of the Charter, ruling out the likelihood of a leaguer being the arbitrator, an encrypted external call came in. Cyborg? Cyborg, are you there? This is Red Arrow. Naruto and Canary glanced at each other before both nodded simultaneously as Canary joined him at the keyboard. Red was not the kind of person to call in for a light chat. Something was up. Red Arrow, this is Maelstrom. You called? Naruto took the call as Canary swiftly ran one of the programs Cyborg had shown her to backtrack the incoming call and ping its location. A hologram of the Earth popped up and spun furiously. Yeah, I hope you know how to operate that hub, bro, cuz I need intel, stat. What do you need? Naruto asked as the hologram stopped and a red dot flashed intermittently. The two blondes glanced at each other again. Though the signal had been bounced through a number of satellites, the program had located an origin point. Taipei. I need to know the exact height of a League of Assassins agent, codenamed Cheshire. Look through the Justice League database. Canary, knowing exactly how to obtain the information, took over from Naruto and swiftly pulled it up for the shinobi to read. 1.67 meters. That's 5 feet 6 inches. Thanks. Mind telling me what's going on? I'm at the Real Asian Peace Summit. Informants had me believe that there could be a spot of trouble here. The archer swore softly, though the two in the mountain heard him clearly. And judging by the fact that I've just spotted a possible match, I'm glad I followed my gut. Need any help? I should be fine on my own. No offense, but I'd like to see if I really am good enough to go full on solo. I respect that, but you're sitting on a powder keg there. Naruto warned as he watched a scowl mark Canary's features. I understand that. In the instant I so much as think I'm in over my head, I will yell as loudly as I can for backup. We'll be by the Zeta tube then. Red Arrow out. That idiot is so goddamn stubborn. Canary exploded the moment the connection died. He's sitting on a situation with so much potential backlash and he's trying to act all macho? Naruto, recognizing that she was in full-on rant mode, chose to remain silent. For God's sake, neither of the two Real-Asias supported the Charter. Thanks to the Bielian Queen's efforts, they, along with almost every second and third world country, believes that the League only cares for the US. And now he, Red Bloody Arrow, one of the most famous sidekicks known to man and a protege of a certified leaguer, wants to just. Huh. So Lex Luthor's the arbitrator. Naruto interrupted as he took notice of the events at the treaty. Didn't see that one coming. Up at the treaty and wait, what? Canary cut herself off, sounding almost stupefied by what she had just heard. Naruto just gestured toward the screens. Just as one of the feeds caught the image of a very familiar assassin dropping out of a tree with a sniper rifle in her grip. And then all hell broke loose. Black Canary dropped her head into her hands, watching almost fearfully between her fingers, as Green Arrow's former protege broke cover to take down the assassin who was almost literally carving her way past the security. The camera crews, ever hungry for the best shot, had zoomed in, thus capturing the ensuing scuffle as well as the arrest of the assassin. Then, when the red-headed archer was apprehended by the leftover security forces, the heroine moaned. There. Naruto said consolingly, patting her on the shoulder for good measure. At least he caught the assassin. Oh, and look. Mr. Luthor just vouched for him. Like that's not suspicious at all. The last bit was stated with cutting sarcasm in a dry voice. This doesn't make any sense. The mortified look on Canary's face gave way to a confused frown as she absently began tapping a finger against the keyboard casing. Why would the United Nations choose Lex Luthor as the arbitrator for this kind of meeting? He's a businessman. He's never once shown interest in diplomatic roles or playing an active role in politics on home soil, to say nothing of the international level. I'm just glad my informants were able to pick this up. Naruto muttered, his eyes still staring at the screens where the billionaire having settled the security issue revolving around Red Arrow, now walked into the conference hall, Red Arrow and his own assistant at his flanks. Canary's eyes narrowed at the shinobi's comment. How did they pick this up? I really don't see the UN simply leaking the name of their mystery arbitrator online. The Uzumaki shrugged, eyes still glued to the screens. To be honest, I try not to get too involved in the hows some of these guys have had or even still have connections to the criminal underworld but are too small fry to bother apprehending. Keeping an eye on them grants me a few snippets like what I got today. The entire statement was a carefully crafted mix of lies and truths. While he did keep tabs on his slowly expanding ring of spymasters, the reason he'd made this connection was that Kennedy had overheard a discussion between Desmond and Tara about if the Taipei mission would require more resources. The head of Cadmus had dismissed Tara's suggestion that she be sent with Kennedy, stating that the security at the summit was already tight enough. It was why he was a bit suspicious of Red Arrow's presence at the summit. The shinobi continued his discussion with Canary by playing his source off as probably having heard of a possible League of Assassins hit. It's how I came to know about the hit on Queen Perdita, he added. Mollified by the off-worlder's explanation, Canary's thoughts turned to other things. That's just disturbing though. The assassin's influence, I mean. How could they have known who the arbitrator would be? Naruto finally turned away from the screens as he shook his head. You're looking at it wrongly. The assassins typically only take hits. If we likely wouldn't have caught wind of this. No, someone likely hired the assassins, which brings up a number of questions. Who the hell are they? How did they know about Luther being the arbitrator? Matter of fact, did they? The last question had the color draining from Canary's face. Because if the assassin's mystery sponsor didn't know about Lex Luthor's role in the summit, then the mission parameters were never about killing the arbitrator. They were about disrupting the summit itself. Happy Harbor, if there's anything we've gotten right as a species, then it's gotta be a tie between music and literature. Raven breathed, feeling the tension that had knotted her shoulders all through the briefing in Mountain ebbing away as she curled snugly into her couch in Haley's living room, reading through her novel of the day, humming along as the strains of Hiroyuki Sawano's Vogel I Am Kafig played through her earplugs. It had been a terrible couple of days for the young girl, so much so that everyone, from Canary and Naruto to Kagaya and even Connor, had picked up on it. Her nightmares, bad as they usually were, had taken on a more disturbing turn. Her father's visage had turned up each and every night, cursing her existence one moment, planting insidious thoughts that required all of her mental discipline to fight down the next and, worst of all, threatening to torture her teammates in the most horrific manner. And while none of that really took her by surprise anymore, it was the way he had delivered each threat, with a calm, quiet confidence that made her fear that he would escape the confinement she had wrought upon him. But he can't, she thought, her mind secure in the certainty of her own memories. Even he can't break the spells I cast to imprison him, and I know none of my siblings can either. If he could have, he wouldn't resort to mind games. He'd just up and destroy everything. Assured by her own thoughts, Raven settled in to continue her reading when a gentle tap on her shoulder returned her to the physical world. Seeing Haley standing beside her, the young magic user sat up and pulled the earplugs out with one hand while pausing the song on her phone with the other. Hey Mrs. Gonzalez. Do you need me for something? Well dear, the young man I told you I'd like you to meet is around. The elderly woman winked conspiratorially and dropped her tone a few octaves for her next sentence. Do be nice to him. He seems like he could be a good one. Shaking her head in an over-the-top expression of painstaking endurance, Raven sighed. I guess this one time wouldn't hurt. A few seconds later, the two snorted in amusement at their own act and Haley led the way into the main bookstore. Raven would never be able to figure out how she'd missed it. The toll of the nightmares abrading her defenses, perhaps, or maybe she'd subconsciously come to see the bookstore as a haven of some sorts. Either way, she had somehow ignored the warnings her internal radar had been blaring at her, going as far as to have missed her own mental defenses jumping into overdrive. Either way, she did not miss the sudden screech of every ounce of self-preservation instinct in her being, absolutely rejecting the very existence of the person standing a few feet away, quietly perusing Haley's shelves. Every fiber of her being screamed for her to get the hell out of the building and to do so yesterday. When the person turned to her, a slight, smug grin on his face, she wished for a second that she'd done as her instincts had demanded. Bloodhaven stretched out languidly on the large windowsill of the warehouse Kakashi laid, calmly watching the workers at other storage facilities hustling about, constantly harried by the supervisors and managers. Life, the silver-haired shinobi mused, you're either leading someone or being led, and even the leaders have leaders. It was a fact that every shinobi learned at a young age. Your Jonin sensei, the anbu captain, the academy instructors. Everyone answered to the kage who, in turn, answered to the daimyo, and when one hit the topmost echelons of their society, they would come to realize that even the daimyo's commands were often dictated by the desires of the financial dynasties that had invested in their rule. Yo one eye, and now I've got to meet my leader, the shinobi thought dryly. With a slight adjustment of his position, he sent himself rolling off his perch to come plummeting toward the ground. At the last second, though, he twisted himself and landed on the balls of his feet with only the barest of whispers telling of his little stunt. And the Gymnast of the Year award goes to. The same, annoying voice that had called him down now echoed in the largely empty warehouse bearing a note of mockery. Kakashi didn't seem even slightly fazed. Gizmo. Did you call me down here to try on yet another ineffectual insult? Judging by the slight twitch in the lanky teen's left eye, the comment had hit its mark. The shinobi just slouched against the wall behind him, sparing a single glance at Mammoth before seemingly closing his eyes. Even if, and it was a huge if, Gizmo tried to attack him, Kakashi was certain that Mammoth wouldn't lift a finger to help. The huge, shaggy young man, for all that he looked more like Bigfoot than a 20-something-year-old human, was quite level-headed if he wasn't provoked, kinda like Jugo. Plus, he had a huge crush on Jinx and would ever go against her commands. Her last words to the techie and the tank were to not jeopardize the mission, and starting a fight could certainly break that rule. Gizmo knew this as well as the shinobi did. Furthermore, he knew that he had no hope of taking out the shinobi without Mammoth's assistance. So, teeth ground together tightly, the techie backed off the issue, pulling up a holographic map of the Earth from his wrist-mounted computer. Jinx has sent our mission details and coordinates. The map zoomed in on North America, then zoomed further until a single location glowed red in the Belrav parish. With Icicle Jr. already in position, our job is to be the pickup for the person Icy will be busting out. The timing of the mission was definitely suspect. Thanks to a quick update from the boss, Kakashi knew about the mission to infiltrate Belrav Penitentiary. As far as the boss knew, though, Icicle's function was to help with an overall prison break, that the young cryokinetic boy had a second objective through in a new angle entirely. Deciding that it wouldn't hurt to fish for additional information before sending a message back, the shinobi asked about the inmate to be broken out. Zachary Crane, the Scarecrow. Gizmo replied immediately. We are to deliver him to a set location in DC by sundown tomorrow. Mammoth whistled softly upon hearing that. That's a hell of a distance. How are we going to get around fast enough? Our benefactor dropped off a gift, it's in the bag. The reminder that he still hadn't cracked the issue of the team's mystery benefactor brought a tiny scowl to Kakashi's brow. It remained one of the two things he still hadn't sussed out yet. Neither Mammoth, Icicle nor Stacy had a clue, and both Jinx and Gizmo remained tight-lipped about that. It was getting to the point where he was considering the use of a genjutsu to have them tell him. According to our benefactor, the ship was found shortly after the First World War, somewhere around modern-day Poland. Designed to be years ahead of anything available as at that time, some rumors claim that it is, allegedly, Wonder Woman's invisible jet. Gizmo informed them as they made it to the warehouse's rear end, the last statement uttered with complete scorn. Like she needs an aircraft. The damned woman can fly faster than any of aircraft currently in production. It does sound very silly when you put it like that. Mammoth agreed. So where's the ship? Right. With a smug grin, the techie pushed a button on his belt and a slickly designed, pitch-black aired right before their eyes. Here. The ship may not belong to Wonder Woman, but it is one hell of a wondrous work of art. Kakashi and Mammoth barely held in their groans at the terrible play on words while the tech head continued. Upgraded to simply outclass any other aircraft the world's got. Its weapons systems are amazing, and the cloaking tech on it renders it invisible to practically every sensor. Deciding that enough was enough, Kakashi surged ahead toward the open hatch of the craft. Enough romancing the damned aircraft and let's go. We're on the clock here. TCH, Killjoy. Would you get in here? The shinobi prodded. Also, what about Jinx and Stacy? They've got their own mission. The techie groused as he swiftly moved to the cockpit and strapped himself in. Remember the cute Asian chick you guys met at the Iceberg Lounge? It took less than a second for Kakashi to remember the person in question. Miss Chan? Yeah, Jade. A few switches were flicked and instruments hummed to life mere moments before a powerful, low but steady vibration ran through craft. Woo! This baby is awesome. The girls? Auto get your panties in a twist one eye. Look, something came up and Jinx decided that they should go check it out. So they did. Satisfied? For now. The shinobi found a seat and, after a few tries that led up to Mammoth showing him how, finally strapped himself in. Whatever Nirvana was, it seemed Jade's search for it was proving to be interesting. Combined with this little mission. Well, the boss would have quite a bit to process from his next message. Happy Harbor. I'll just leave the two of you to enjoy a nice chat. Haley smiled as she walked out of the living room, pausing for an instant to wink again at Raven before walking back to the main store. Raven's cordial smile died the instant the woman was out of sight, and she instantly and silently cast a privacy spell upon the room. Beyond these, though, she showed no further reaction to the being standing a few feet away, the same smug smile he had borne since she had first laid eyes on him still twisting his roguishly good-looking features. Take a seat, she offered politely, her tone perfectly neutral as returned to her usual couch. If you were ever caught by surprise, particularly by an enemy, never give even the slightest hint that you were caught off guard unless it is a part of your plan. Raven had never expected that Kaguya's advice to herself, Donna, and Calder on what to do in diplomatic situations would come in handy, but, as she stared into his eyes, she found herself giving thanks that she had paid attention to those lessons. Well, this is quite the cozy place. He smirked at her, an eyebrow arched mockingly. I'd never have expected the daughter of the devil to dwell in such a peaceful environment. It's a living. She shrugged neutrally, doing her best to keep her emotions from showing. Plus, the old lady's nice and she gives me lots of space. You don't seem very surprised to see me. The young man mused, dropping his jaw into his left hand while his right tapped absently on the cushion of his couch. How come? If you can, try to draw up emotions in your enemy's mind. Pride is one easy way to achieve this. Make it seem like something else caught you off guard to belittle their efforts and bruise their pride, or find a way to stroke their ego and make their head swell. Whether a bruised ego or an inflated one, pride always leads to a fall. Raven knew all about pride. The dark-haired teen snorted dismissively. You and your brothers tend to leave a stench wherever you've been, Belial. Not noticing would have surprised you much more. Step 1. Bruise the ego. Though, to be honest, seeing you surprised me just a bit. You've always been quite the busy one. Step 2. Inflate the ego. First off, sis, I go by Jared when I'm on this here ball of dirt. The young man corrected primly, before continuing. Second, you're right. I usually am the busy one among us three. After all, I am the most civilized of us. However, when I got news of Daddy's little girl's whereabouts, well, I certainly couldn't delegate that to the Bludgeon Brothers, now could I? Once again, Raven had to force her body to remain calm. Whether he realized it, she couldn't tell, but Belial had just given her a bit of information in his last statement. Someone tipped them off about my whereabouts. That little tidbit of information changed things drastically. If it had been any one of Belial's two siblings or the eldest himself, she could have dealt with the intrigues on her own. However, the addition of a third party feeding them information meant that, somewhere out there, someone had something to gain from setting them on her trail. Still maintaining the veneer of calm, Raven shrugged mildly. True, Jake and Joe aren't quite interested in the arts of subtlety. No, they are not. And so, I chose to check up on my source's intel. Well, here we are. The thing that wrapped itself in human skin tried for a smile, but it came off a little too smug to be genuine. And I have to admit, you have changed, little sister, and not just physically either. Raven simply arched an eyebrow questioningly, though she could feel a stirring in the air. A slight charge in the air that had the hairs on the back of her neck standing. Something was about to happen. Belial continued, seemingly oblivious to the slight tensing of her shoulders. I mean it, really, you couldn't lie to save yourself when dear old dad brought you home, and you were barely any good at it by the time you trapped him in that slab of Azereth soil, but now, damn girl, if I didn't know you were lying through your teeth when you started talking, I'd have been suckered. Your tonal inflection, your poker face. I really need to find out just who taught you all that and thank them for corrupting you so well. The little pin pricks of warning from before gradually morphed with each word the entity said until, with a silent cry of rage, the young girl snapped. Aware of the fact that she was still in Haley's house, Raven stymied her initial desire to simply blast Belial away, opting instead to grab hold of his hand and, calling forth her power in a rush of emotion, teleporting them to a forested clearing on the edges of the Happy Harbor docks. The instant they appeared, she lashed out with a blast of dark energies that sent Belial flying. Unwilling to let him rest for a second, she flew over to him and pinned him beneath a roiling flow of energy from her hand, her hair flying wildly in the swirling vortex such an unbridled release of her power commanded. Enough, her voice, normally calm and a bit of the soft side, had become deeper, darker and as demonic seeming as the rest of her appearance. What are you doing here? Instead of fear or even a hint of anxiety, though, Belial simply laughed heartily. Woo, I have got to meet your new friends. This is a whole new you. Not even the increase in her energy output was enough to faze him as he continued. I mean, I didn't even have to threaten you with that sweet old lady's life to get you smoking pissed off. Damn, Jacob and Joseph will owe me a whole bunch for this. That was it. Though she tried to keep a tight leash on her emotions, trying not to tap into the sheer destructive power her demonic heritage granted her, the mere thought that the demon pinned beneath her had even thought to use a person she considered a friend against her was enough to bring down the gates. With a roar of rage, her power exploded outward from her, her output nearly tripling as she lunged at him, her hands curled into claws that sought to gouge his very eyes out, demonic energies crackling and spitting around her hands like an inferno. Her initial assault went unblocked and each strike brought a dark, heady satisfaction to her mind that she found herself enjoying. For every bit of flesh that she gouged out, a part of her gloried, and for his every scream, she felt a twisted pride surging, empowering. It was a cycle she knew well, one that would lead to her own self-destruction. And so, with tremendous effort, she pulled herself out of the dark waters, switching from her devastating melee strikes to ranged attacks that would grant her the freedom to return to a mental equilibrium without ceasing her attacks on Belial. She was on the verge of regaining control when a powerful bolt of raw power struck her from behind. With a savage scream of pain and fury, her aura surged again, and her clothes, a pair of black jeans, a dark purple top as well as a leather jacket the same color as her jeans, all unraveled. In a split second, her nude form was concealed by the last gift her mother had given her, the one-piece suit with the cape and hood attached. In that instant, the demon returned. She'd barely flown a meter forward when she regained control of her tumble and spun around to track the new source of danger. Her eyes, now a pair of blazing crimson orbs, swiftly tracked the two newcomers, her half-brothers, she noted with a sneer. Surging forward so quickly that the air around her screamed, she moved to their center and began unleashing a barrage of claw strikes and jabs that had the mortal bodies the two demons wore scampering in a bid to avoid damage. They were not so lucky, and as her fingers connected, gashes appeared in their wake, streaming blood profusely. Their screams of anguish rent the air, and her grin grew wider as their pained expressions grew. For the second time in about as many minutes, her assault was stopped by a blast of dark energy. Her rage grew and she dashed over to the source of the attack, her skin darkening to a maroon shade. She never made it to Belial when another blast cut her off. Enraged, her cloak billowed out as she changed directions, moving to intercept the brother that had just attacked her. Over and over, the attacks continued, spearing out at him from different angles, never allowing her rage-addled mind the chance to focus, never giving her rational mind a chance to establish control. And, as her rage grew, the changes continued. The purple outline of energy an inch above her skin darkened till it was almost black. Her aura grew continuously until the very air hummed with her power. Stinger-like constructs of light-absorbing darkness stabbed out of her cloak in an uncontrolled fashion. And then, with a roar that shook the earth itself, a second pair of crimson eyes opened above her normal pair. Reacting with practiced efficiency, the three brothers launched beams of their own into the ground beneath her feet. As the shockwave threw her into the air, they lashed out with controlled energy whips to bind her. "Do not let go," Belial roared at his siblings as they strained to hold on to the violently struggling girl. "We did not go through all this just to lose her again." "Too bad for you then." That single second's loss of focus cost the brothers immensely. In that second, Raven, sensing their loss of focus, outright overpowered their bonds in a surge of power, flooding the clearing with a stifling aura. At the same time, three flashes of dull gray gleamed in the evening light before the brothers stumbled backward. Looking down, they found the round handles of gray knives lodged in their sternums. Attached to the handles were simple scraps with unintelligible squiggles on them. "Katsu." A powerful whump rang out from the clearing as the demons' burnt and bloody bodies were flung back violently. Seconds later, the bodies aged rapidly until they dissolved into dust. Raven's eyes darted around the clearing warily, the crimson orbs seeking the new presence out. "Hey, Ray, I'm not going to hurt you." The voice seemed to be coming from a single spot a few meters to her right, and her head turned to focus on the spot, her hands curling into claws again. "Easy, Ray. Easy." The figure slowly walked out with his hands lifted, palm facing her in the universal gesture for peace. It was Naruto, dressed as he had been when she'd left the mount earlier that day, though the lower half of his face was concealed by his half-mask. She didn't trust that this wasn't a trap of some kind, though, and so she tentatively reached out with her esoteric senses to ascertain his identity. For the second time since she'd left Azereth, she felt an all-encompassing peace that finally chased the intoxicating power of her demonic heritage away from her mind. Without the tremendous boost, however, she felt so exhausted that she couldn't stand on her own anymore and simply collapsed. She would have struck the ground too if the blonde shinobi hadn't moved to her side in a burst of speed and caught her. "It's okay, Ray," he whispered to her as he gently rubbed her back, trying to calm the violently retching girl's heaves. "I'm here, Ray, don't worry." Tears sprang into her eyes as her body revolted against the dark energy that had coursed through her uncontrolled, and they poured as she realized what all of this meant. Trigon was coming. Unknown location. "You don't seem particularly surprised at the failure of those three to acquire the girl," Savage stated calmly as the scrying circle the Lord of Chaos had summoned blanked out when Trigon's three children faded from the earthly plane. "Considering how much you warned them to ensure that they caught her, I'd have expected a bit more. Peek from you." The witch boy simply smirked as he set his familiar free to run around while he summoned a pair of glasses and a bottle of wine. Now, Vandy, I know you understand one of the basic tenets of rendering service in business is to make it seem like you're putting in more effort than you actually are to make the client think you deserve the hefty price you're asking for. Clarion replied as he filled the glasses. "I'm simply doing the same." "You'll have to be a bit clearer. You see, Vandy, I never expected those three to pick the girl up. In fact, I knew they'd fail. As much as using the girl is a possible way to get Trigon out, there's a way to do it that will be spectacularly chaotic and will keep the heroes off our back and focused on Trigon. Plus, Trigon will be further indebted to me and, as an added bonus, the whole thing will be a nice little test for your secret society's mage." "And what exactly does this plan entail?" "Let's just say it'll be a world splitter. And here's the next on the list. Banged out way quicker than even I expected, to be honest." The exact reason Raven reacted as she did during that little fight will be explained in the next chapter. Meanwhile, as regards her slow transformation as opposed to an instant switch to a demonic side, consider it that she's placed blocks on her own power because she really doesn't want to go about destroying shit. As such, for each level of control she loses, her appearance becomes more demonic. First, her normal eyes go red, then the other changes as they are listed until the final two appear. The dark stingers from beneath her cloak and her second eyes opening. At this point, she's in full demon mode and becomes a conduit for Trigon's power. Now, to address a few things, I'll specify reviewer names if the issues aren't general topics. Madara Finuchiha, I'm kinda sorry the story seems to be delving into the characters more than the plot. It's mostly cause I tend to focus on character development to a great degree. I'll do my best to push the plot onward from now on. The Amazo issue. I stand by what I did there. That bloody android has stolen everything, from biological abilities like Martian Manhunter's phasing to energy-based abilities like Captain Atom's to enhanced abilities like Flash's speed, enhanced because it is granted to him via Speed Force. Having seen all these, including the fact that it copied Superman's strength which is based on solar radiation, I fully believe that the android could have, possibly, copied Naruto's chakra-based abilities. Whoa, easy there, Naruto, take it easy. Kaguya's voice sounds to my ears like it's coming from a tremendous distance even though I can feel her body pressed into my side, holding me up so I can stagger over to a couch. It has been 30 minutes since I brought Raven over to our Happy Harbor apartment and it feels like it has been the longest half hour of my life. Never before have I felt so incredibly drained, not even after some of the closest calls my team and I had when we were running about dodging Madara. By the gods, is this how Granny, Big Sis Shizune and Sakura feel after pulling off some of their more intense medical ops? Fuck. I wish I could go back in time or something because I need to kiss their feet or something. Medics are amazingly resilient. Naruto. Kaguya's sharp call snaps me back and, though the edges of reality still seem blurred, the first thing I notice is the glass of water hovering right in front of me. All of a sudden, I realize just how parched my throat feels and I lunge forward to get a drink. I can feel the front of my shirt getting wetter as the water sloshes past the edges of the glass to add moisture to my sweat-drenched shirt. What happened to you? I can hear the concern in her voice as she pulls the now empty glass away from my mouth and dries my mouth with a towel. She's changed over the past couple of days, not so much that she seems like a totally different person but the changes are there. She's become a less pushy about things, more accommodating of opinions that aren't hers. Naruto. Stay with me dammit. I'm here, like I said, not a 180. Sorry, my head's spinning and thoughts are rambling. Whoa. I feel a yank on my feet and then, abruptly, my head sinks into something soft. Huh. This actually feels a lot more comfy. There. You should be feeling more comfortable. Her figure rises up in my peripheral vision until she's looming over me. It takes a moment for me to realize that she must have adjusted me so that I'm lying on the couch and she's standing by my side. Now, how are you feeling? Drained. I admit readily. Gods, I only ran diagnostics on her. How the hell does Granny do it? My vision seems to be clearing up and I notice her eyes narrow a bit before returning to normal. You used a medical technique? When I nod, she does so as well, like she expected my reply. It's no surprise you're feeling drained then. From what you explained to me, those medical techniques require chakra control leagues beyond what you should be capable of. Holding back the bulk of your reserves so you could utilize the pinpoint precision required to even run those diagnostics. The sheer mental effort you must have put into doing that is mind-boggling, Naruto. Huh. So that's why I'm feeling drained. Ah hell. You need to find a book or something and learn that shit. I'm not sure if I want to pull an encore. Something flashes in her eyes but it's gone before I can comment on it. I'll do what I can. How is she? Ray? I struggle to sit up and when I do, even with Kaguya's help, I feel exhausted all over again. She's burnt out. Her body isn't used to channeling such huge amounts of dark energy so, when it all faded away, she crashed. Wait, dark energy? Like Biju Chakra? No, Biju Chakra is, for all intents and purposes, just pure energy. I reply, recalling some of the more technical discussions Kurabi and I had during our time together. The effects of its use are determined by the intents of the user. That's why when jinchuriki utilize it after gaining control over it, they don't suffer the negative effects like the chakra burns and all the other things untrained hosts suffer. Having regained some more energy, I sit up and reach for the jug on the stool beside me. After getting some more water, I continue. The energy Raven was pouring out felt vile. Evil. The closest I can even think of was Orochimaru's killing intent back when I was a genin and even that pales horrendously to what I felt in that clearing. It's no lie, not even her aura when she was in full-on avatar of the Shinju mode could compare to that snaky bastard's in terms of just how wrong it felt. Both hers and Madara's were auras of overwhelming power and the ghetto statues was one of piss your pants fear. It takes a while for Kaguya to come to terms with what I've just described and I spend that time emptying the jug of its contents. So you're basically telling me that Raven tapped into a power that is evil, she says, coming to terms with what I've just explained, and that she's now feeling the after effects of doing that. I nod. As at the time I stepped in, she seemed to have reached a crescendo. She was pouring off a stable amount of energy. How much? Just a fraction beneath Yugito's when she goes full on Matabi. Kaguya whistles softly. That is a lot of power. I can understand where she's coming from. Essentially 2 tails worth of power. Not too many people can say they've ever harnessed that much, even on this world. The question is, what did those 3 want with her? Whatever they wanted, they'd crafted one hell of a plan to get it. Recalling some of the things I noticed at the clearing, I drop the glass and focus on her. They had a barrier of some sort around the entire coastal area. It dampened their energy signatures so much that without the locator seal I placed on her, I'd never have found them in time. Plus, I believe they wanted Raven to tap into that power to her absolute limit. Kaguya blinks upon hearing that. The look of bemusement doesn't last long, though, before she recovers. What did you see? I saw 3 beings that, while less powerful than Raven individually, were more powerful as a unit and had greater control over the same power that drove Raven beyond her mental limits, fighting what seemed like a losing battle until she reached her peak and then suddenly turned the fight around in seconds. I watched them struggle to hold her down and I heard them all but admit that they wanted her spitting mad. They wanted to use me to open a gateway. Somewhere in the Middle East, This should be a good location. Clarion mused as he stroked his familiar. A crossroad, a ley line intersection, secluded location. What do you say? The striped cat in his hands purred contentedly and jumped out of his hands before stalking off. A satisfied smirk grew on the witch boy's face as he pulled out a dully glowing amber crystal from his coat. I expected you to like it, now. Walking forward a few paces, the young-looking entity hunched and placed the crystal in the center of the magic circle that had soundlessly engraved itself into the ground as he walked. Taking a step outside the circle, he clapped his hands together. Now, to call in the candidates. Woden, Blackbriar Thorn, Felix Faust, Wizard. As he spoke, 4 men appeared, one after the other until 4 of the 5 points were occupied. Well then, Wizard stated in an aristocratic tone, shall we begin? This circle utilizes a pentagram base, charlatan. Felix Faust replied, sounding very bored. There are only 4 of us here. But, the fact that our host has not taken up the final spot should be sufficient to tell you that we are incomplete. Woden cut the British magician off. Well, I'm glad that at least 3 of my coworkers are competent. A female voice echoed around them, eliciting a small smirk from the Lord of Chaos. Suddenly, the winds picked up speed and a miniature cyclone erupted over the final point. Lady Circe. Woden, Felix Faust and Blackbriar Thorn inclined their heads politely at the newcomer. A startlingly beautiful woman with pale skin and dark violet hair clothed in highly expensive garments that would have been perfect in ancient Greece. Wizard simply scoffed. A flashy entrance does not make one a. Whatever else he was about to say was cut off when, with a dismissive gesture from the woman he was about to insult, he was transformed into a pig. Puts a new spinistic pig. Blackbriar chuckled. Though, from our host's initial actions, I'd say we need him, lady. It's the only reason I haven't fed him to my pets, Circe said, her scarlet eyes skewering the squealing animal more thoroughly than a metal pike. I suppose he has been disciplined enough, though. With another dismissive gesture, the sorcerer was returned, quailing, to his physical form. Now, let's begin. As the others began their chant, Clarion set up 2 barriers. The first, a magical barrier that would protect the magic users within the circle from interference, and the second, much larger one, to warn him of the hero's inevitable arrival. It wouldn't do to have them disrupt the fun too quickly after all. Happy Harbor. The tale of Arella. 15 years ago, a young woman, going through a really trying time, confided in her best friend and asked for help. The friend tried her best to console the young woman and, in the spirit of helping, suggested that they both attend a meeting held by a group on their campus. The girls enjoyed the first meeting and, over time, both became regulars. The young woman, the focus of this story, became more than just a regular, though, and the group meetings began to fill the void she felt she had inside. She was accepted into the group's inner circle and realized that the inner circle were into the occult and they wanted her to join them. Though she tried to resist them, the temptation was too much for her and she succumbed. By the time she graduated, she was fully immersed in the world of the occult, and when the opportunity to summon an entity from beyond came, she gladly volunteered herself to be the requisite sacrifice. When the entity appeared, in the form of an attractive man seeking a bride in exchange for desires granted, the young woman felt honored to have been chosen. It was an honor that she would come to regret. During the period of a courtship, she was blinded to the entity's dark actions by her devotion to her commune and her own lust, and on the chosen day, she willfully laid in bed with him. As they consummated their bond, however, the scales on her eyes fell as she felt his evil roiling deep within her, and at dawn, she ran. She was, however, but a human, and as she ran she watched every door slam in her face. Every path she took lead into his presence. Her fellow occultists, in the throes of pleasures they desired, were subtly killed, and the few she could have turned to rejected her as though she were cursed. Such was her lot in life, it seemed, until the day she discovered that she was with child, the child of the devil. "The woman you just described," Naruto said softly, taking Raven's hand as he peered intently into her eyes, "she's my mom." Raven replied tiredly, tears flowing out of her eyes from the pain of recalling her mother's story. She loved me, but I could always tell that she hated herself for her mistakes." "That's why you reacted the way you did," Kagaya said with a slight frown, her comment drawing looks of confusion from the other two. "The poison ivy mission. During the debrief with the team, I noticed your slight flinch when Calder brought up the chaos issue." Recalling the moment, Raven nodded shakily. "I think it referred to me. I mean, I don't really understand the whole thing, but I was afraid that it had to do with my paternal lineage." "About that?" Naruto interrupted. "You've hinted at his demonic nature, but who is he? The blonde trailed off, looking for a way around the elephant in the room. "It's okay, you can say it." Raven exhaled, again sounding exhausted. "The thing that is my father is a millennia-old being that thrives on conquest and domination of worlds. In his realm, his kingdom stretches over countless worlds, and he's never shown any intention of stopping. Having an idea of the kind of being he was, it did not take either Offworlder a minute to figure out what was coming. Earth is his next target, and he sent those three to get you," Kagaya stated factually before another frown marred her features. "But why does he need you? Why not simply show up at our front door?" "I was able to devise a means of imprisoning him during my time with him," the young girl replied with a sad smile. "It took me close to a year of being forced to live in his realm, but I was able to trap him within a crystal, the last magical relic of the world my mother hid me on, before it was destroyed." Both off-worlders were impressed by what they had just heard. "Raven, that was. I don't think brave's a right enough term for that," Naruto said, trying to get the girl's spirits back up. "It wasn't bravery," she replied, her entire body radiating shame, guilt and self-reproach. "It was the least I could do." Her words were broken again as her body was racked with silent sobs. "After all, I destroyed Azareth." Naruto and Kagaya exchanged a glance upon hearing such self-condemning words, but they opted to remain quiet when the young girl began to speak. "I call upon Azareth the Great, the defender of the land. Upon Metreon, the mother, who brings peace unto all. And upon Zinthos, the one, embodiment of all, if you deem me just and hear my call. Then return me to the land where peace once flowed." Recognizing the chant for what it was and guessing at her intentions, both off-worlders braced themselves for whatever came next. They need not have bothered themselves, the effect of her spell took hold instantaneously. One moment, they were within their own home, the next, they were standing within the ruins of what might once have been a beautiful place. All around them lay the evidence of the great destruction that had swept through Azareth, taking lives and ravaging the environment without care. Whatever caused this all but irrevocably destroyed the natural balance. Naruto said in a tight, shuddering voice as he let the tiny bit of natural energy he had absorbed flow out of his body. He had seen destruction on grand levels before. Madara's meteor strike was one, and the Jubi's catastrophic technique that warped nature was another. Heck, even his planetary-tailed beast Rasenshuriken was capable of great destruction. Yet never before had he even heard of destruction so total that nature was nearly destroyed as well. It will take eons before this chunk of rock ceases to be anything but a barren chunk of rock. I didn't know. Hey, Kagaya chided softly as she pulled the younger girl into a hug. "Hey, take it easy, okay? I know the guilt is tearing you up inside, twisting things and making you believe. It will never be okay," Raven yelled angrily, pushing herself away from the princess. "I summoned Trigon here. I disobeyed everything my mom told me, every warning she gave me. I disobeyed." With each word, the anger inside her turned to grief, and by the end she was in tears again. "I did this." Gently, the former avatar of the Jubi cupped the younger girl's cheeks and turned her face till their eyes met. Violet eyes staring into violet. Grief and self-condemnation teeming from both eyes. "Believe me, Raven, I know what you're going through," the white-haired princess said softly. "I know what it is like to have taken steps that ultimately brought a world of hurt upon innocent people, and I know what it is like to feel that guilt every day. I know it seems endless and the pain feels impossible to run from, but you can live in that pain, Raven. It will tear into you until there is nothing left inside." Something in the Offworlder's eyes seemed to connect with the magic user. Perhaps it was the conviction she could see staring right at her. "So what do? I can't." "You can live for them," Kagaya answered gently. "You can live according to the morals of these people, and you can fight to ensure that this never happens to any other people. Whatever your decision is, though, let it be one that honors these people." For a moment, all was still and nothing existed but the two, both having experience, one counseling the other. Then, the moment passed. "Ray, can you take us back?" Naruto grunted, his voice sounding strained as he nestled his head between his hands. "We need to get back. Something terribly wrong just happened." The watchtower moments before. This makes no sense. You're right, Diana, it doesn't make any sense at all. Batman said as he reviewed the video the Martian Manhunter had recorded from the bio ship during Superboy and Miss Martian's extraction. Not if you're looking at it conventionally. What doesn't make sense conventionally? The Flash asked as he walked up to them, arms laden with a bunch of snacks. Following the extraction of Superboy and Miss Martian from Belle Reve Penitentiary, Martian Manhunter chose to stay behind to watch over the recapture of the inmates just in case any assistance would be required. The Dark Knight answered as he played back the footage. From what he observed, and what I've just confirmed, the inmates seemed all too willing to return to their cells with their collars reactivated. That brought a frown to the Flash's face. You're right. That doesn't make any sense. Unless the whole point of the riot was never about getting out. Exactly. The Dark Knight nodded and pulled up a few files. During the riot, a number of prison officials were knocked unconscious, maimed and outright killed. One of those knocked unconscious was Amanda Waller. The director of Argus? The speedster seemed a bit baffled. The heck was she doing at Belle Reve? As it turns out, she was the warden of Belle Reve before she was promoted to the rank of director. Wonder Woman replied. During a recent overview, she was given the directive to give up either of her positions. Naturally, she chose to wash her hands off the penitentiary. Oh, okay, so what was she doing there today? Handing over. Batman answered as he pulled up another profile. Originally to a woman named Candace Shreve but a last-minute change to Hugo Strange, a well-known psychologist and one of Waller's assets. She chose him to be the new head because, officially, he could try out methods of rehabilitating the inmates. Right. And unofficially, he can provide candidates suitable for her needs. The Dark Knight answered. Whichever it is, though, the fact remains that Waller was handing over today and the inmates rioted just enough to cause a few issues but not enough to actually escape. Except 3 inmates. Wonder Woman continued. Tuppence and Tommy Terror and Zachary Crane. Crane. The Flash tapped his fingers on the snacks as he tried to pin a face to the name. Where have I heard that name from again? You likely know him as Scarecrow, the Dark Knight answered with a dark scowl. Strange reported only minutes ago that the 3 escaped moments after the riot began, making it seem as though they had planned it out. So our guy's in one of yours. The Flash breathed. It just had to be the Scarecrow. Any idea how he got out? I do. Wonder Woman replied, drawing a look from the speedster. Someone flew him out with my old invisible jet. He couldn't help it, he burst out laughing. Sure, the lady that can fly faster than sound has an invisible jet. He trailed off as he noticed the Batman stare and the Amazon smirk. Holy, you actually have one? I do. The heck do you need it for? He cried animatedly. You can fly faster than sound at the very least. Alien contact isn't restricted to this day and age alone, you know. She smiled nostalgically. The javelin was an engagement gift from one such alien who felt he could woo me. Suffice it to say that I'm still single today. Someone tried to woo you. With an invisible jet. The Flash carefully drew out each part of his statement to be sure that he hadn't missed a point. When she nodded, he threw his free hand up in exasperation. What the heck? And how did you manage to lose that? The nostalgia on her face was replaced by a look of sadness. An old friend of mine. Sometime during the First World War. He sacrificed himself to stop the release of a powerful neurotoxin from being released. Oh, there was no need to ask for further clarification. Regardless, thanks to the advanced sensors in the bioship, we were able to identify the javelin and track its motion and time as it left. The Dark Knight continued brusquely. The time of departure falls within the optimum escape window I've calculated judging by the last time Crane was spotted on the security cameras. The Flash seemed stunned. So, judging by the available evidence, someone set up the whole prison riot just to get Crane out. It certainly seems, recognized, Black Canary. We've got a problem. The blonde heroine stated as she swiftly walked up to the trio. The team just disappeared. Happy Harbor now. The instant they reappeared in Naruto's apartment, Raven clutched her head in both hands, grimacing at the overwhelming feeling of wrongness that pervaded her senses. Beside her, Naruto groaned and collapsed in a heap, his eyes flickering between their usual sapphire and the dusty, yellow-orange of Sage Mode. Raven. Naruto. Kaguya swiftly cleared out a large enough space at the center of the living room and adjusted the two so that they laid spread out on the carpeted floor. What's going on, you two? Talk to me. She spoke urgently, modulating her voice to relay the urgency but none of her fear. Someone's using powerful magic. Raven gasped out, it feels wrong. Naruto managed to complete the younger girl's sentence. His willpower was being tested to the extreme as he tried to section off a portion of his mind to deal with the mental assault he was under by what he identified as nature screaming for him to fix it. It didn't matter that he had no idea what was going on and would be unable to if the voices didn't quiet down. Something just happened and it has nature itself running scared. The statement had Kaguya flabbergasted. She knew of her companion's skill as a sage, Knew that due to his habit of tapping into the power of nature as a means of relaxation, he had developed a connection to this world that was there regardless of whether or not he was actively immersed in its power, and so she knew just how disturbing his words were. Something, magic, if Raven was correct, capable of such most certainly spelled trouble for the world. Deciding that Naruto and Raven could, at least temporarily, survive without her watching, she raced into his bedroom where they had been before Raven had woken up earlier and snatched up her phone. By the time she returned to their side, she was listening to the dial tone of Calder's cell. "Princess, Calder," she interrupted brusquely. "I have Raven and Naruto writhing in pain from something that has their senses thrown into disarray. What's going on?" "Forgive me, Princess, but I currently cannot tell you exactly what is going on," the Atlantean replied, sounding just as frazzled as she did. "Connor, McGann and myself were just about to head out after our debrief with Canary when she disappeared right before our eyes. We are still trying to figure it out. Sorry to tap into your call like this, apologized, but I think I might have an idea what's going on. You two should put the call on speaker for this next bit." Neither Kagaya nor Calder bothered with questions. Done. "Good. Now, from what I've observed and from the posts appearing on social media right now, I believe all the adults in the world just disappeared." "What? You heard me. I've tried to contact a few adults that I know and there has been no response. Also, there has been a number of car crashes all around me. I'm trying to grab plate numbers to draw up owner information. That might help me make a more accurate statement." "That'll take too much long." Kagaya frowned, her mind going a mile per second as she tried to think up quick workaround. "Robin, can you pick up radio signals from your location?" "I've got the equipment, yeah." "Good. See if you can pick up any emergency services chatter." "Got it." The idea she'd provided was a good one. In a world without adults, it was unlikely that the bulk of the ESU had magically survived such a purge. As such, monitoring their communications would give a clearer indication of whether S analysis was accurate. "In the meantime, Calder, I need you to contact any members of the team that aren't at the mountain." Kagaya continued. "If S search pans out, yourself, Artemis and McGann will be needed at as many locations as possible. Children around the world will need reassurance, and so seeing the sidekicks they have so often heard about standing up to the task will be a great boost." "What about me?" Connor finally spoke up, having been content to listen until that point. "You talked about McGann and Calder leaving to help." "You will be leaving as soon as possible, Connor," Kagaya affirmed. "However, I'll need you, Robin and Donna to shoot a televised message to reassure the children. With videos of Calder, Artemis and the rest of us doing whatever we can, combined with your telecast, we may be able to mollify many of the children." "But, why me?" Kagaya understood exactly where the young Kryptonian was coming from. Even with all his leaps in confidence and self-assurance, issues of self-esteem and self-worth were difficult to deal with and had the nasty habit of cropping up at terrible points. She understood him perfectly and knew exactly what to say to him. "The symbol you bear on your chest has come to stand for hope, Connor. People will watch the telecast and see, not 3 young adults, but 3 symbols that have become a fundamental part of the Justice League. They will see the super in you, Connor, just as they will see the wonder in Donna and the bat in Robin. So, Connor, you." It was the perfect thing to say. Unfortunately, had some news for them. "I got in and the situation is almost exactly as I said. The adults are gone." "You said, almost, just now." McGann pointed out before either Kagaya or Calder could. "What's new?" "Well, I'm still hoping to get confirmation, but, from what I heard, it seems as though every pregnant woman just disappeared as well." To McGann and her romantic interest, that didn't seem so out of place, all things considered. While Kagaya first figured it out as quickly as Calder had, the Atlantean spoke up first. "The women and their children, I presume?" "Yeah." Even over the phone, Kagaya could hear the frown in S tone. "It makes no sense. The women are adults but the unborn children are just that. Kids. We cannot focus on things we can't answer." Kagaya cut in decisively. "I'll keep an eye on Naruto and Raven, and the instant we are able, we'll work outward from Happy Harbor. The rest of you, do as we've agreed." "Got it." The others replied as one. With the call concluded, Kagaya locked the screen and turned round to her charges. Raven, it seemed, had gotten control of her senses and was able to sit up, her cloak covering most of her body, and Naruto wasn't jerking around as badly as before. With a decision to check up on Raven first, the white-haired princess walked over and crouched beside the younger girl. "How are you feeling?" My head's still sore from that overload," was the groaned reply, "but I'm pretty sure I can head out and be useful." "I can too." Naruto slurred as he sat up as well. His hand shot up to rest on his forehead, covering his eyes in position of exhaustion, but in that instant, Kaguya's ever-observant eyes caught the slight twitch of his lower left eyelid. "No, you cannot," she stated decisively as she helped Raven up. "Your words are still slurred and I can practically count each individual heartbeat from how much your temples are pulsing. To say nothing of the mental strain you're still trying to contain." She added to herself. "You cannot go out as you are. You'd be a liability." But Naruto, she called softly, leaving the now steady Raven to head for the front door while she dropped to her knees before him. Naruto, I can tell how badly you want to go out there right now. I really can. The edges of her eyes crinkled just the slightest bit as she smiled at him. But right now, the whole team needs you to recover. In fact, if what I'm thinking is right, then the whole world needs you to recover, and to recover fast. The last part of the sentence caught him off guard. Woo, what are you talking about? The way he slurred his words was of definite concern to the princess, though she forced that down to continue projecting an aura of calm to him. He'd need it, considering what she was about to tell him. I don't think this entire thing is an isolated event, between what happened a few hours ago and this. Well, I think this might be a play on Trigon's part at getting out of his prison. Try. Raven's dad? He finally drawled. He could be doing all this? It's not outside the realm of possibility, she replied with a shrug. But if that is what all this is about, then we really need you back in top shape. It took a moment, but then the determination she was used to seeing in the blonde's eyes returned, sharpening his formerly unfocused gaze. Gots eat. Well, first step, determination, right? All else could come after regaining determination. And she had given him just that. I'll see you later, Naruto. And with that, she stood upright and marched out the door to join Raven. Not before she left a pair of clones, though, she would let no harm befall him. Mount Justice an hour later. Having done as much as they could for the children of Happy Harbor as they could, Raven, Kaguya and a significantly better-looking Naruto walked into the large open space leading up to the computer hub, anxious to hear more from their teammates regarding their situation. While the other two seemed perfectly okay, the blonde shinobi was still feeling the taxing mental struggle he had just experienced in order to cordon off the voices of nature from the rest of his mind. As such, by the time they arrived, the rest of the team had already assembled and were already deep in conversation. How are things? Kaguya spoke, foregoing any greetings in light of the situation, as they joined the others, drawing their attention. We're holding up well, all things considered. Between the telecast you advised and our physical presence in as many cities as we could reach, reports that we've been able to prevent an outburst of hysteria. Calder reported. We were just debating whether or not to run a second one on our progress. I wouldn't advise that, Naruto warned. We have no idea just what we're facing, neither do we know the cause. Running a second telecast could be detrimental to us in the long run. Thank you. Artemis threw her hands up triumphantly. How far have you gotten with tracking measures? Kaguya asked the young protege who hadn't shifted focus from the monitors. Any luck? Nada. No conventional means of tracking has panned out, and most of the unconventional methods I do know aren't providing answers. Most? Raven asked pointedly, shifting uncomfortably as she guessed where the conversation was headed. There is one way. When I went to Atlantis to speak to my friends there, both Tula and Garth told me that they were experiencing mild cases of nausea that they only felt when they were in the presence of particularly foul magic. Calder explained. I am uncertain how many other trainees may have felt it, but, considering what Kaguya told me, we have come to the conclusion that you may be able to track the source of this situation, using magical means. The shudder that coursed through her body was not missed by either offworlder, neither was the look of terror that marred her face for a split second. Raven was absolutely terrified of the idea. I'm not sure you understand what you want me to do, she said slowly, her voice cracking. The kind of magic that would do this has to be, in this case, so powerful that even Atlanteans are feeling the effects. And you want me to track it down until I have a location for it? Have you even considered the possibility that this could all be a ruse to get me to open up to such powers that could overload my own human desires and leave only my father's daughter behind? You want to risk my humanity? The fear-induced hysteria was so great that by the time she was done, she was out of breath from all the screaming. The mountain was silent. Leaning forward slightly, Naruto whispered into Kaguya's ear, prompting a nod from the white-haired princess before pulling the now silently sobbing Raven close and walking out with her. After walking for over 5 minutes, accompanied by a silence that was broken only by a sob or a sniffle, Raven pulled away from the shinobi. I'm fine. He stopped walking and turned to her, saying not a single word. I said I'm fine, Naruto. She glared at him. What else do you want to hear? The shinobi didn't reply, not immediately. First, he sat on the ground. Right there in the hallway he crossed his legs and sat Indian style. Then, he gestured to the floor opposite himself. Join me? The girl couldn't help the scoff that jumped out of her mouth or the sarcastic comment that followed. You want me to sit right here in the hallway? Humor me. A part of her sneered at the very thought of listening to him, that part that her father had tried to cultivate, the prideful part. Yet, she found her body obeying him, sitting across from him with a bit of space between their knees. Nothing transpired between the two for a moment. Then, she felt it. That aura of peace that she'd experienced on the cliff so long ago and in the clearing mere hours before that had given her the strength to fight back her demonic powers. Nature's peace. His eyelids slowly gained a reddish-orange hue and, when he opened his eyes, his pupils were simple horizontal bars in a saffron sea. Yet, she could see that it wasn't easy for him to tap into nature's power, not with how wrong everything felt. His left eyelid twitched sporadically and the muscles in his jaw clenched tightly. "Don't worry about me, Raven, I'll be fine." She couldn't understand it. How could he be smiling in spite of the obvious discomfort he was in? "Now, you're still with me, right? Do I look like I'm going somewhere? Just wanted to be sure," he replied before releasing a deep breath. "Can I ask you something? You're my shrink. Can you?" Though she likely hadn't meant it, the younger girl's words had carried a bite to them that might have offended another person. To the shinobi, though, he could see what she was doing. Hiding herself behind a wall of thorns to send him running. He understood, though, and so he simply pressed on. "What are you really afraid of?" "Really?" Raven couldn't help the sneer that crept onto her face. "You're asking me that less than 8 hours after you watched me go ballistic? Well, gee, I don't know. Maybe I'm afraid of spiders. Or rats. Or maybe, just maybe, I'm afraid of the kind of power that wipes my own identity away until I'm just a mass of dark energy waiting to be pointed in the direction of my target." For a few seconds, the only thing to be heard in the corridor was the echo of her shout until Naruto spoke again. "Is that really what you're afraid of?" "Yes, Naruto, I'm pretty damn sure that's what I'm afraid of." "Can I ask you for a small favor?" "Fire away." Letting his eyes drift shut, Raven found herself envious of the look of utter serenity that descended upon him, and, if he wasn't sitting right in front of her, she would have sworn that he had disappeared. "Alright then, I need you to close your eyes." With a sigh, Raven straightened her back and did as he asked. "Now focus on the moment just before you tapped into your darker half. Ignore everything else at that point and focus on just that." Ensconced by the calming aura he projected, Raven did as he asked, focusing on the memory until it filled her mental faculties. Interestingly, all of the fear she expected to feel was completely absent. "Are you there? Can you feel anything now?" She could. She could feel her anger, her simmering rage at Belial for even insinuating that he had Haley's life in his hands, her fear that if she tapped into her demonic heritage, I'd be more like him. Her eyes opened of their own volition as the realization set in every instance that she had been forced to utilize the power her paternal lineage granted her, since she'd learned of his true nature. She had always been afraid that she would become the very thing that she despised. She had just never noticed the fear. "I've been in your shoes, Raven, having access to a power that is intoxicating to use yet fearing what I'd become every time I tapped into it," he explained soothingly as she wrapped her head around her discovery. "One of my teachers told me that without understanding the true root of our fears we can't overcome them. So, Raven, do you understand?" She wanted to say yes, to say that she understood, yet, when she stopped to think it over. "I know the root of the problem, but I can't say that I understand it." The shinobi smiled encouragingly at her. "That's alright, Ray. Understanding rarely comes so swiftly. And the truth is that those fears, they're justifiable. The kind of power you and I have access to, while not the same, are incredibly potent. When we tap into them it feels like we can do anything. Like we can bring the world to its knees. And that scares the hell out of you." "Me?" Raven completed his statement quietly, earning a nod from him. "What you need, Ray, is an anchor. Something or someone to keep you grounded, a mental lighthouse whose light you can always see and count on when it seems like you're losing yourself." "Who am I supposed to look to?" she asked tiredly. "My mom's dead, I don't even want to refer to him as my father. Azrath's gone. I'm alone." Reaching out gently, he placed a hand on her shoulder, drawing her downcast eyes to his. "No matter what, regardless of the situation, Raven, you'll never be alone. If no one else seems to care, then know that I will." She didn't know how long she spent there, in the little pocket of peace he provided, staring into his eyes, searching for falsehood. She never attempted to find out. It didn't matter, because, by the time the two walked back to join the rest of the team, she had a location for them. Somewhere in the Middle East, lounging on a magic circle high above the chanting sorcerers, a certain entity found himself utterly bored. You'd think that with the world being split in half and all that the heroes would hurry the hell up," Clarion grumbled to his familiar as he stroked the cat's fur. "I mean, come on, it must have been hours already." "You really shouldn't be so impatient, Clarion. It's unbecoming of one of your stature." "One of my stature shouldn't have to be waiting around for some pesky brats," the witch boy sniped back. "Besides, Astral Lady, shouldn't you be down there keeping the spell up?" Cersei's astral projection laughed. "I think we both know that the spell is a few moments away from being self-sustaining, Clarion. Besides, I'm not like those other plebs who can't walk and chew gum simultaneously." The Lord of Chaos glared at the projection for a moment before the facade cracked, the grin on his face matching the prideful smirk on hers. "Yeah. They're good, sure, but you've always been one of the best. So, how goes your little side project?" "That? Oh, it's doing wonderfully. I really should thank Vandal for providing an avenue for me to test drive it." "I'll send him your best." The witch boy paused as he felt something brush his sensory barrier. "And from both planes too. Hey, looks like the guests are arriving. Hey Tikal, wanna have some fun?" The feline familiar cocked its head and gazed at its master, meowing inquisitively. "Oh, I'm just thinking of giving them a nice little Superboy, do you hear that? Naruto's softly asked question startled the team, forcing them all to halt their movements and glance at him. It was odd for the shinobi to speak out of turn on missions, and in this case, he specifically cautioned against any form of communication at all. Maelstrom, Aqualad voiced the confusion everyone else felt, yet the shinobi didn't answer, opting instead to just ask the question again. Still confused, the Kryptonian clone decided that the blonde wouldn't break his own command without good reason, and so he stopped moving and focused his senses. Nothing. Maelstrom, I don't hear anything. A light frown touched the shinobi's forehead, though no one saw it. Exactly. No howling winds, no shifting sands, not even the crunch of the sand as we walked over it. Stealth parameters are off, guys. They know we're here. Not even 2 seconds after he had uttered those words, he dived into Artemis, tackling her roughly to the ground jet in time for the crashing figures to feel the displacement of the air as something split the air at about her belly level. Shard, he barked the moment they were below the impact zone, twisting and rolling to ensure that the archer sustained minimal damage. The princess, having already anticipated his need the instant she'd felt him move, flared her Byakugan to life, wincing in pain as she tried to ignore the blinding nexus about 200 meters ahead. Everyone form up, circle facing outward, now. The rest of the team, shaken out of their initial bemusement by the shinobi's actions, acted instantly, moving as fast as they could to surround Maelstrom and Artemis, who joined them on the perimeter as soon as they could. What do you see? The shinobi shouted across to the princess, who was swift to deliver an answer. I'm not too certain what they are. Humanoid, torsos only, lower body seems to have melded with the sand. Huge arm-like projections. I'm looking at them in absolute black. Maelstrom's frown deepened. Absolute black was the Hyuga code for lacking any visible chakra or known energy sources. If these things appeared as absolute black to one with her eyes and were nigh invisible to their senses, they were probably in a bit of trouble. HMPH, you brats might actually be worth a bit of my time, an obnoxious voice huffed from above, drawing their attention to the young-looking figure standing on a glowing circle, arms akimbo. Well, since some of you can tell that, I suppose there's no real reason for me to keep my toys hidden anymore. The shinobi's eyes caught the figure's smirk and felt his instincts blaring warnings to him. Fetch. Scatter, he yelled, grabbing Artemis again and blasting forward with a chakra-boosted leap. Less than a second later, the earth heaved and a gout of sand surged upward from where they had just been. Taking a glance around to confirm that everyone was okay, he then focused his attention on their now visible foes. Shard's description had been spot on. 7-foot-tall obsidian torsos, headless, with spiked armor and arms of almost equal length as the bodies. The most interesting thing, however, was the fact that their torsos seemingly sprang up from the sand at their feet, though their colors were all wrong. 5 of them plus their creator, chance of more if we destroy one. 10 of us, but the objective is to get the worlds back together. The thoughts flew through his mind and he arrived at a conclusion before the sand settled. Without a word, he left Artemis and charged at the creature closest to Miss Martian, launching himself over the sand in a blur of motion. When he was within range of its arms, he sent a pulse of chakra to his feet, sending him flying upward to vault over the creature's swinging arms. It's faster than I expected, he thought as he fell, fingers flying through hand seals as he descended. We'll have to stick to this plan. Kaden. Rosin Enden. The technique he shot out, instead of the simple ball or gout like most basic fire techniques, was elongated into a bullet-like shape and rotated on a horizontal axis, granting it greater penetration power. Not pausing, the shinobi landed and spun toward the Martian. Link us up. Now, he hissed quietly, the roar of the flame dulling out the whispered words even further. To her credit, the girl didn't argue, she simply obeyed. Miss Martian. Aqualad asked as he felt the connection click into place. Maelstrom said. I told her to do this. Maelstrom cut in brusquely. Raven, Aqualad, Kid Flash and Shard. Head over to the Nexus and stop whatever they're doing there. The rest of you, keep the golems busy. The one I tagged was fast enough to react to my speed, so keep your distance and only go in if you have a clear shot. Keep in mind that they seem capable of regenerating from damage. Shard added as she noticed the gradual closing up of the hole Maelstrom's earlier attack had dealt on the golem. I recommend separating them from the sand before dealing any attacks if possible. What about Clarion? Robin asked as he moved over to cover Artemis, who had knocked an arrow and was tracking one of the golems. He's a powerful sorcerer, powerful enough to go up against Dr. Fate. Won't he just keep spawning more problems for us? Raven, look at those golems. Are they self-sustaining or reliant on Clarion's energy? I'd say self-sustaining. It is impractical to have them leeching off your own reserves if you can have them maintain their own form. Doing otherwise would be overconfidence in the extreme. Alright then, Robin, I'll keep him busy. The shinobi growled as he locked eyes with the smirking figure high above them. Superboy, Troya. 2 of you are our heavy hitters. The others will work on creating openings for you, take them out with extreme prejudice. Are we clear? The rest of the team voiced their assent as they dealt with the closest golems around them, doing their best to create distance between themselves and the automatons. Then let's go. Not even a second after voicing his command did Naruto shoot forward, fingers flying through another sequence of hand seals as he raced toward the golem closest to Raven, drawing its attention. With reflexes honed from years of combat, he dashed onto the golem's arm and kicked off it to gain altitude. Now airborne, he twisted about and launched a powerful stream of lightning from his hands toward the levitating witch boy who simply arched an eyebrow. "Best you got?" the Lord of Chaos inquired as he casually deflected the stream at the now departing party headed by Raven. Without a word, Maelstrom performed a mid-air shunshin, appearing between the two and redirecting the attack into a golem on the ground before landing. "I'm your opponent, Brad." As he had expected, the witch boy's eyelid twitched at the comment, "I am not a brat." Maelstrom simply arched an eyebrow, blatantly mocking the entity. "I am not a brat." The witch boy screamed as his fists became engulfed in dark red flames and he swooped down on the shinobi, intent on taking his head. Meanwhile, seeing that Raven's group had taken the opening Maelstrom had provided, Robin assumed command in his absence, using the knowledge gained from Maelstrom and Shard to direct the rest of the team. "Miss M, we need you to stay back. Play long-range support, and the instant we get a chance, you'll have to uproot these things and hold them off. Superboy, Troya, you two will have to be the bait. Get in close, slam them hard and then get out. Artemis, you and I will be the support. Prep your freeze arrows because we're going to need a bunch of them to keep these things immobilized till Maelstrom finishes things off with Clarion." "Easier said," Superboy grunted as he intercepted a fist flying toward Artemis who swiftly loosed a trio of explosive arrows into the exposed shoulder joint, then done. "If Shard is right and this guy's final play is to summon Trigon, then I can't afford to go guns blazing just yet." Hunched forward with his arms trailing behind him, Maelstrom raced a HEB lasts that the witch boy sent hurtling toward him, his mind constantly working to gauge his opponent. Following his initial taunt, the shinobi had purposely allowed himself to be put on the back foot to provide a greater window for Raven's team to head over to the Nexus. By his estimates, they should have covered at least a 50-meter distance, not too much, but it was a decent start for them. He had already determined that his opponent was a very emotional one who would fly off the handle at the slightest provocation and had created a plan of action to take full advantage of that. Pulling to an abrupt halt, he channeled a burst of chakra to his feet and blasted up toward the enraged witch boy, ready to fire off another technique at him. Having spent the past few moments determining his reaction time, Maelstrom had little doubt that the magic user would be forced to either block or dodge this one. Kaden. Hosenka. Rather than going for a focused, beam-like attack, the shinobi went with a scatter shot, forcing the magic user to swing around the attacks. Dodging the multiple projectiles didn't take too long, but Maelstrom knew that due to the placing of those shots, Clarion would have to lose sight of him for a second or two, and so, the instant he landed, he created a clone that instantly bent the wind into a light dispersing shell and disappeared. Preparations finally set, the shinobi went on the attack, calling forth his chakra to bend the elements around them, constantly keeping Clarion on the back foot, though he never struck a decisive blow. "Until Raven returns, I had to keep him alive, possibly even conscious. We can't take the risk of taking him out now only to realize that we need him to undo this whole thing."
It was a dangerously thin line to walk, acting like he wanted to inflict as much damage as possible, whereas the actual plan is to keep the enemy occupied. It was a difficult thing to do, and that fact was highlighted when, in a burst of incensed rage, the witch boy violently repelled the elemental attacks headed his way. Then, with greater speed than he had displayed since the beginning of the fight, Clarion summoned a forbidding cloud of roiling dark energies.
"Let's see you call me a brat after this," he snarled as he unleashed a hail of his own lightning strikes from above, hellbent on destroying the black-clad shinobi. "Die, die, 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 die. TCH, you really are a brat." The witch boys were just beginning to widen when he felt a tremendous force slam into his back, sending him hurtling toward the ground only to be intercepted by another hit before he could hit the ground. Over and over the pattern repeated itself, never giving the Lord of Chaos a moment to focus until, finally, he was blasted into the sands courtesy of a bone-crunching axe kick to the back. Then, the shinobi landed beside the boneless heap and slapped a pre-made warden tag onto the witch boy's back to cut him off any external power sources and to immobilize him. "I'll keep an eye on him," his clone stated as it appeared beside him. "The team's handling the golems well. You should check up on Raven." The shinobi nodded, then jerked his head in the direction of the rest of the team, if they need anything. The clone never got the chance to recover as, at that moment, a powerful surge of power washed over them, triggering a sharp feeling of nausea in the real Maelstrom while destabilizing the clone and forcing it to dispel. Reality itself seemed to wail at that moment as the separated worlds began to merge back into a single plane and, all around the world, things shifted back to the state they were before the split. Crushed cars billowed out and reformed. Fires were put out as shattered bricks returned to the walls they once constituted, and various forms of aircraft that had crashed when their pilots had simply vanished were put together seamlessly. The greatest change, however, was felt by the rare few who had connections to nature. Maelstrom, Poison Ivy, the Floronic Man, Swamp Thing and others like them. The screams of agony had been replaced by cries of joy as mothers were reunited with their offspring. Nature sang, and as it did, it strengthened those connected to it. Feel that? Artemis' shout was the first thing the shinobi heard as the nausea passed and his senses returned to him. Taking a quick glance around, he noticed that the golems were gone and the rest of the team were headed toward him. Clarion was still sprawled on the ground in front of him. The main thing that caught his eye, though, was the large, ring-like structure that had just popped up at about the same location Raven's team had gone. Whatever it was, it had his instincts screaming for him to destroy it, and, when he reached out with his senses, he recoiled visibly. That thing reeked of the same energy Raven had tapped into earlier, and it registered to him as being dormant. If his suspicion was even on the path to being correct, then he couldn't risk having it come online. His thoughts were interrupted when he heard the maddening laugh of the witch boy. Surprised? Well, that's a shame. You seemed so level-headed and calm when we fought that I thought nothing could faze you. The sarcasm in that mocking voice set his teeth on edge as a horrible scenario dawned on him. You realize it now, don't you? Clarion continued, driving the spike in deeper. You and your little band of heroes were so focused on the world of adults and the world of children. Guess none of the ladies on your side had a baby bump, huh? What is he talking about? Donna asked as the rest of the team joined Maelstrom. The shinobi couldn't hear them, though he could barely hear anything. 3 worlds, not 2, one for adults, one for children and one for the pregnant mothers. Guess you didn't expect a bunch of supervillains to have hearts, did ya? The witch boy laughed again, long and hard as he watched the shinobi tighten his fists in impotent rage. Heartless heroes, thoughtful villains. Ha! Irony at its whoops. The Lord of Chaos grinned as he teleported up above the gathered heroes' heads, his familiar appearing in his arms a mere moment later. Ya missed, ya sore loser. Did you think that little slip of paper would hold me down? You're an even bigger idiot than I thought, and now? Well, I do think old Trigon's gonna be happy on this little ball of dirt. With his final piece said, the witch boy disappeared. Sparing a moment to create a clone that would relay his intentions to the rest of the team, he took off, going as fast as he could without enhancing himself with nature or Biju chakra. In the distance, a bolt of dark purple energy shot into the sky. Done. For those that queried my addition of random characters and merging the animated movies with the YJ series, I think this proves that I have mapped out a decent plot for my actions. Anyhow, Ray's portion as the star of the show comes to an end in a chapter or two, almost certainly the next chapter at this point. And, before I get blasted by a fuck ton of hate mail, let me explain a little tidbit to those who skim without really reading. Naruto had 0 problems dealing with Clarion. For all intents and purposes, he curb-stomped the gender-confused, are ye a witch or a boy? Make up damned mind, lad, twat. The reasons it took him so long to do so, though were listed in the FIC, but I'll spell them out here. 1. Following his initial taunt, the shinobi had purposely allowed himself to be put on the back foot to provide a greater window for Raven's team to head over to the Nexus. 2. If Shard is right and this guy's final play is to summon Trigon, then I can't afford to go guns blazing just yet. 3. Until Raven returns, I have to keep him alive, possibly even conscious. We can't take the risk of taking him out now only to realize that we need him to undo this whole thing. That good enough for you? To my more understanding readers. I wish I didn't have to put that up, but I really just want to cut off any hate. You fucking nerfed him again. Mail rigged the moment he kicked off the ground. Maelstrom activated the heart link seal he had inscribed on his upper left shoulder. While he had a few more of the same seals inscribed at various portions of his body, the one he had just activated connected his mind to shards so they could communicate at the speed of thought. The decision was more than worth it as, less than a second later, he felt his partner yell for his attention. I'm here, Kaguya. Talk to me. You need to get over here now. The white-haired princess sounded desperate. Things have gone downhill in the worst way possible. Run me through it. We were played. I think they created 3 worlds, not 2, and were able to set an ambush for us on the 3rd world. When Raven yanked the anchor gem out of the ground, the reset took hold and, out of nowhere, a huge structure appeared. Some mercenaries opened fire and, in the ensuing chaos, much faster than either we or the adults could respond, 2 apparitions just flew down and possessed Wonder Woman and the Flash. A third tried for Superman, but Batman stabbed him with a green crystal of some kind and the apparition chose to take Batman instead. Maelstrom's jaw tightened as he flew over sand dunes. More than just verbal communication, the Shinkakaru, as it was called in his native tongue, allowed him to see his partner's thoughts. He was basically watching all that had transpired from her point of view as she spoke. What else? The Flash happened. He took out the rest of us faster than we could blink while Wonder Woman assaulted Superman. They were at it for a while until she struck him down. She killed him. That was a cause for alarm. Superman was the Earth's major powerhouse. With Trigon on the verge of showing up, they'd need his strength. If he had been taken out by a possessed Wonder Woman. No, she simply beat him down. I believe he is just unconscious. He seemed a lot weaker than he typically appears, though. Maelstrom breathed a sigh of relief. And the other one? The possessed Batman forced Raven to activate the ring, else he'd have the Flash kill us one after the other, beginning with Canary. Maelstrom sighed in frustration. While he would admit that the hostage card was a good one to play, doing so must have been the cause of the flash of purple light he had observed moments prior. Damn it. Who else is there, and in what state are you? Kid Flash, Canary, Green Arrow, and a new person. He utilizes magic. Besides my broken arm and Wally's twisted ankle, we're all fine, she replied. The bone in my arm's already set. Just the ruptured muscles causing problems. However, the Flash is standing guard over us, and with both Superman and Wally down, we're currently pinned. How about the other two? They're standing guard around Raven, likely to ensure that the activation is done right and to prevent interruptions. Alright. I'll be with you in a moment. With that said, the shinobi cut off the link and, with a thought, called forth the second form of the Biju cloak. Less than a second later, he had covered the rest of the distance and, like a guided missile, he streaked toward the Scarlet Speedster. Kaden. Hosenka. And as much as he had no intention of ever going up against the members of the Justice League due to their good works, the shinobi had seen the effects of genjutsu and certain mind-altering poisons and techniques, powers that could turn even the most righteous of men into vile beasts, and he had accepted the fact that such scenarios were not impossible. Now, as he neared the possessed metahuman, his precautions kicked in and he called up his mental database of the speedy hero. Maelstrom knew that, though the speedster could likely cover longer distances faster than he could, up close he had the advantage, so the first thing he had to do was to close the distance. As such, he was using the large spread of the Phoenix fireballs to distract his opponent so he could move in. The plan worked. The possessed Flash had been so busy dodging the fireballs raining from the sky that he never noticed the flashes of golden light until it was too late. Now within bodily striking distance, Maelstrom began his attack, delivering a series of precise punches, kicks and jabs in a specific pattern. Knowing how fast the speedster was, the shinobi had no doubt that he was analyzing the pattern to find the beginning and the end of the cycle, and so, it was no surprise when the possessed metahuman struck out in an attempt to clock him in the jaw. The attempt never connected, and the returning right straight to the jaw, followed by twin body shots to the floating ribs and a palm thrust to the abdomen, left the hero reeling, opening him up for the shinobi's coup de grace, a vicious stomp to the speedster's left leg that snapped the bones like they were twigs. The shinobi's slit pupils narrowed as he watched the Scarlet Speedster scream in agony. The pain-filled cry taking on a ghostly wail as a dark, shadowy creature burst out of the hero's mouth before dissipating like mist beneath a sunny sky. Maelstrom, Canary's yell drew his attention, and he turned to the blonde heroine just as she ran up to him, while her hooded partner and an unknown person, most likely the stranger Shard had spoken of, warily approached the Flash's groaning figure. "Are you okay?" Serious as the situation was, the shinobi couldn't help but arch an eyebrow at the question as he eyed their disheveled appearance. "Shouldn't I be asking you that question, Canary?" "Probably, it's just, you just took on the Flash and it all happened so fast." Understanding where the woman was coming from, the shinobi shook his head. "I'm perfectly alright, Canary. I was able to deal with him quite easily, likely as a result of the possession." He lied, choosing to downplay the fact that he had just defeated the fastest man alive without taking a single hit. The apparition probably hadn't integrated whatever skills it learned from the Flash fast enough to do significant damage to him. Shard added as she walked up to them, her left arm bound from wrist to mid-forearm in the strips of clothes she had torn off the injured arm, while her right arm supported Kid Flash's as she dragged the unconscious youth with her. Seeing the look of concern on their faces after laying him down, she lifted both hands and wiggled all her fingers. "I'm fine." Combination of a rough landing with a slight loss of concentration caused it. "The bones set and the muscles will heal soon enough." "That is good, because we have a much greater problem to deal with," the heavily accented voice of the unknown figure stated as he walked up to them while supporting the Flash with the Green Arrow's help. "You really did a number on him, kiddo," the archer added as they gently placed the speedster on the sand. "It was necessary. I believe causing significant damage to the host forces the apparitions to leave their bodies." The shinobi shrugged before turning to the stranger. "You said there was trouble, Mr. Zatara." The formally dressed man replied with a slight inclination of the head. "As regards the trouble, well, now that the young lady within the ring has activated this rift gate, we cannot stop the events that will proceed from this point. Trigon's coming," Maelstrom stated, earning a nod from Zatara before turning to Shard and Canary. "What about Aqualad, Cyborg and Shazam? Where are they?" "They set out after the human elements of this ambush," Shard replied. "They may not have gone far, so they'll likely head back as soon as they can," Canary added. The shinobi's eyes narrowed again as he took in the people he had with him, injured and otherwise. "Zatara, how long do we have before the rift gate fully opens? 'Cause I'm guessing that based on your words just then, we literally can't stop its activation." "You are right, my friend. Once the gate is activated, all that is left is for it to open up. The young lady's presence there is simply speeding up an already concluded action. At best, I'd say we have 15 minutes. Alright then, they'll be here within that time, giving us more options. In the meantime, Canary, I need you and your partner to go up against Batman. All you need to do is to deal sufficient damage until the apparition leaves him. I'll take on Wonder Woman while Shard and Master Zatara watch over the wounded. I'm uncertain why Superman's been weakened, but it's the kryptonite. The Kryptonian groaned as he sat up, bringing his bloody fist up to show them the green crystal. Arrow, do you mind? Got it. The Emerald Archer nodded and took the crystal away, stashing it in a special pouch hidden beneath his quiver with a deft sleight of hand trick. Can you get up? It's night time. The man in blue groaned, drawing baffled looks from the rest until he coughed out a few pained chuckles. I'll be fine, it'll just take a bit. Maelstrom nodded, storing the entire conversation away for further perusal at a later time. Judging by the fact that they haven't attacked us yet, I'd say they're more concerned with the ritual being completed than possessing any of us. And if what I think is behind that gate is as powerful as I've been led to believe, then we'll need you up and running as soon as possible. The Man of Steel nodded. I'll do my best. On an unspoken agreement, the three fighters ran forward to challenge their respective opponents. Having studied up on the many heroes and villains of this world, to this point, Maelstrom found himself respecting those who were capable of fighting even without their powers. Perhaps it was a bias born of his own origins as a shinobi, but he considered those like Superman to be inferior. After all, what could they do when their powers were stripped away from them? No, to the shinobi, people like Black Canary and Deathstroke were true warriors. As far as he was concerned, the sword-wielding woman standing before him stood right at the top of that totem pole with only a handful of others. With all his research, he was yet to find a weakness to this woman, no shortcut to defeating her short of overpowering her, and even for him that would be no easy task. I see it in your eyes, young man, the apparition controlling her smirked as it twirled the blade in her hand expertly. The understanding. I know not what powers wreathe you in those flames, but even then you cannot defeat me. Not in the body I wield. Not with the skill I. Maelstrom moved. Having had experience fighting people with a love for hearing their own voices, the shinobi knew that the best time to attack a monologuing foe was just before they completed their rants. After all, if you had let them get so far, you might as well let them finish, right? Covering the gap between them at a faster pace than he had moved in his fight with the Flash, the shinobi attacked, seeking to begin the fight with a brain-rattling punch. His fist did not connect. The possessed woman, reacting on instinct alone, had shifted to the side, allowing his fist to fly past as she attempted to bury her fist in his gut. The shinobi was up to the task, though, as he slipped his free palm between her striking fist while jabbing his elbow outward to strike her in the jaw. Once again, she attempted to twist out of the way of the strike to bring her sword to bear. It made no difference to the shinobi, who simply extended his cloak out from his elbow, allowing his strike to connect while pushing him away from her. The instant he had a bit of space, he moved again, this time going low with a sliding kick that connected instantly, tripping the woman up and allowing him room to press his attack. To her credit, the possessed woman fought back as hard as she could, turning away more than half of his attacks and lashing out with a number of strikes that would have connected were it not for him utilizing his cloak's amorphous nature to turn them aside. For those few moments, the fight was at a stalemate, both fighters giving as good as they got until, in a display of pure skill, the woman caught him with a right hook to the jaw. Unfortunately for the possessed woman, though, her opponent was unlike anything she had ever faced, possessing a mind capable of pulling ideas beyond the capacity of most others and the power to enact any of his harebrained schemes. As such, she never saw the retaliatory knife-edge chop to the neck coming, the shinobi having used his seeming stagger to conceal the strike. The resultant split-second loss of muscle control proved costly as Maelstrom shifted into a tighter stance than his preferred flowing fist stance and struck at her with a series of pinpoint strikes designed to compound the moment of paralysis. Maelstrom, can you hear me? Little busy right now. He grunted, keeping up his attack. Superman wants to talk to you. I'm patching him through now. Maelstrom, can you hear me? Clearly. Good. Get her to kneel and grab the lasso. I'm on my way to help you subdue her. The command seemed oddly worded to the shinobi, something else that he planned on dissecting at a more convenient time. In the heat of the moment, though, he chose to defer to the Kryptonian's commands. Dropping low, he kicked out at her left knee, forcing her to drop onto that knee, before grabbing the lasso looped at her waist with a yank. Not even a second later, Superman crashed into the sand about 2 feet away and limped over to join him. Here, it'll be back in control of her body in a few moments. The shinobi warned as he handed the lasso over. She will be in control in a few moments. The Man of Steel replied assertively as he walked up to the snarling woman and bound her with a few lengths of the lasso, leaving enough slack for him to keep a firm grip of. Who are you? Grunting and growling, the possessed woman refused to answer, drawing a frown onto the two men's faces. The lasso compels you, devil, Superman snarled angrily as the lasso began to glow with a golden hue. The instant the light of the lasso reached the bound woman, she doubled over and screamed as though in terrible pain. The 4 pairs of eyes widened in agony. Let me go, you alien filth. She never loved you. Suddenly, her features returned to normal. You sicken me. I never loved you. I never cared. For an instant, the shinobi saw a flicker of doubt cross the Man of Steel's features and the hue of the lasso dimmed noticeably, only to be chased away by fierce determination. I asked a question and the lasso demands the truth. The lasso lit up with the surge of determination from the Kryptonian, and the possessed woman's screams and frenzied thrashing grew animalistic. I am corruption. The possessed woman's growls were almost indistinguishable from her screams as the apparition fought against the lasso's power, yet, even as the screams grew, Maelstrom noticed the gradual lightening of her skin tone, her human features seemingly clawing their way back over her skin. I am Diana the Mischira. The woman's yell took on a ghastly screeching tone as the last of the apparition's features were chased away from her skin and the apparition itself coiled violently in the air until it dissipated. Is she okay? The shinobi asked as he watched Superman gently cradle her in his arms. My head is sore and my body will be bruised, but I will be fine. Wonder Woman replied tiredly, lifting a hand to caress the Kryptonian's cheek. Thank you, both of you. Though she had addressed the two of them, the shinobi knew that her focus was on only one person at the moment, so he returned to the rest of the team, deactivating the cloak as he moved so that by the time he appeared before them, all traces were gone. Maelstrom, we got here as soon as we could. Aqualad stated the instant the shinobi reappeared before their, now much larger, group. As I was just telling Black Canary, the human elements of the ambush we pursued were able to get away somehow, though evidence we gathered at their last known location points toward the fact that they belonged to a ritualistic sect. The Cult of Blood. Canary spat disgustedly. Eep, following the teachings of their leader, a charlatan going by the name Brother Blood. A powerful charlatan, Green Arrow added, though he sounded just as annoyed as she, leading a flock of powerful sheep. We'll look into him after all this. The shinobi stated decisively, turning his attention to the rest of their group who were standing around their injured teammates. How are they? As you already know, Superman is up and about. I'd say that he's somewhere around 60% recovered. Canary reported. Neither of the speedsters are up and going yet, but the Flash assures us that he'll be ready in about 5 minutes. He's uncertain about Kid Flash. And Batman? The two leaguers exchanged slightly sheepish glances. Well, let's just say that he's gonna be sleeping off a heavy dose of sedatives. Green Arrow answered. He'll likely be out of it for the duration of this fight. Maelstrom wasn't surprised that it had taken such measures for him to be put down. From all the information he had gathered on the heroes, the Dark Knight was definitely not an easy opponent to go up against. Aqualad, please call Zatara. We need him to give us everything he knows about this Trigon. The Atlantean nodded and quickly walked away. Meanwhile, I've been meaning to ask. Where are Red Tornado and Martian Manhunter? Right now? They could be anywhere on Earth. The Green Arrow replied with a slight shrug before explaining further. Following this whole Kitty's World split thing, we reached out to as many associates of ours as we could, pooling resources and trying to mitigate the effects of the whole thing on the rest of the world. Black Canary continued. When Zatara gave us this location, they chose to stay behind to organize rescue efforts in whatever way they could while generally just keeping the peace. You require my presence? Zatara spoke as Aqualad returned with the magic user. We need everything you know about Trigon. Maelstrom stated frankly. In order to defeat him, we'll need a plan, and we can't do that without a decent scope of his abilities. Trigon's abilities, my friend. Trigon is an embodiment of evil given great power. The records I have tell of his ability to control demons, unleash blasts of power from his body, grant powers to those that desire it. He imbibes souls and can transform matter on a colossal scale. The Homo Magi shook his head tiredly. There is a reason why no child of his has never been allowed to grow old. The last comment drew the attention of them all, though Maelstrom seemed to understand. It is an act one neither commit nor condone. Zatara explained. Yet I cannot claim that I do not understand why the Magi who choose to do so make that choice. I have been to the broken shards Trigon leaves when he finishes with a world. The term, husk, barely begins to describe it. But to kill a child, Aqualad muttered, his distaste for the notion plainly visible on his dark features. Raven showed Maelstrom and I what Trigon did to her mother's home, Shard said quietly. Like Master Zatara said, husk wouldn't describe it. Nature itself was left in tatters. It will take millennia before even a blade of grass can spring up on what's left of that world. The quiet yet profound amount of silence in the white-haired princess's recollection forced Black Canary and the Green Arrow to think things over. We can't dwell on those thoughts. Maelstrom finally spoke up. The fact remains that, due to the structure of the Rift Gate, he's already on his way. We need to stop him. Zatara stared at the young man. I take it that you already have a plan? The barest beginnings of one, yes. The shinobi grimaced. Raven, the young girl up there, he gestured at the Rift Gate, was able to bind Trigon before making her way out of his realm. I'm pinning my hopes on her being able to do it again. In the meantime, we need to move Batman and KF to a safer spot. This place is about to become a war zone. While the effects of the Rift Gate's activation were limited to mere miles around the giant mechanism, the whole world felt the effects of its opening. Surging outward like an omnidirectional tidal wave, the twisted, evil power of Trigon's hellish realm affected all that it touched. Landmasses heaved, water bodies roiled, air currents violently rebelled, dying plants and animals simply withered. And humans? The lucky ones, those with weak hearts and failing organs simply passed. The stronger ones suffered nausea, severe vertigo, splitting headaches. For the heroes facing the coming storm, even beneath Zatara's most powerful barrier spell, the effects were felt by all. And then, as abruptly as it had begun, the aura of evil simply dissipated. Maelstrom rose up unsteadily, though his eyes were locked onto Raven's levitating figure, as he mentally suppressed the shudders that ran up his spine. The last time he had felt such concentrated evil was when the Jubi first appeared. The runes on the Rift Gate abruptly stopped glowing, just a yawning black vortex appeared, the metallic structure of the Rift Gate forming its boundaries, and a powerful suction dragged all in its wake into the rift. A second later, Raven began to fall. She hadn't dropped half a foot when Maelstrom caught her and gently laid her on the desert floor, a few flickering gold flames tracing his path through the air. "Raven? Are you alright, Ray?" He could feel her heartbeat steady and her pulse strong, and so he wasn't particularly worried about her physical health. He was worried about her emotional health, and when he saw the tear slide down her cheek, he knew that his worries were spot on. "I'm sorry." She was crying now, curled into herself and repeating the words like a mantra as racking sobs shook her body. It took him a few moments to calm her down and get her to look at him. He could see, past the fear and guilt, the wonder in her eyes at his golden appearance, and he remembered that she hadn't seen him in that form. No matter. She recognized him either way. "Raven, this isn't your fault." She turned away from him as the guilt surged back up, overwhelming her. "Naruto." "It isn't," the shinobi replied firmly. "We all got played, Ray, you, me, the team. Honestly, if we really want to blame someone, then we might as well blame the League for not keeping tabs on their villains, or on Dr. Fate for not being here to occupy Clarion." Maelstrom shook his head. "No, Ray, you did the best you could with the hand you were dealt. I don't blame you in any way, and I sincerely doubt that the rest of the team does either." The shinobi then crouched and stuck a hand out to her. "But right here, right now, we need you, Ray." She slowly placed her hand in his, almost like she feared that his outstretched arm was an illusion that would fade away the instant she touched it, and the moment she was certain that he was real, she grabbed him tightly. "What? Why do you need me?" The self-recrimination in her eyes made him want to hide her away from the coming battle, but he knew how pivotal she would be to them. He wouldn't let her doubt herself. "Ray, look at me." He gently held her and turned her face until she was staring into his eyes. "On your own, at a time when you were less skilled and he was much more powerful, you were able to imprison Trigon, to lock him away so tightly that he couldn't make a move against you. You did that, Ray, and you can do it again. And this time, you'll have backup. I know going up against him terrifies you, but you've defied him once before and he couldn't do anything to stop you. You succeeded where so many have failed, and trust me, I spent a bit of time talking to the League's #1 magic user. Zatara swears that what you did, and doing it all on your own on top of that, should have been impossible, yet you did it. I have faith in you, Ray. I need you to have faith in yourself." The conflicted look in her eyes lasted all of 2 seconds before being replaced by the foundations of belief. In his words, yes, boo her own self. After hearing so much about the enemy they were to go up against, Black Canary found herself feeling slightly underwhelmed by the figure that stepped out of the black portal. Barefooted and covered in tattered gray pants and a threadbare brown shirt, he looked like the stereotypical Latino playboy. Bronzed skin, thick black hair, a tall and well-muscled frame. And then, he opened his eyes. Like a bonfire on a windy night, his eyes burned balefully, raking over them like hot coals, measuring them and finding them wanting. "This is my welcome party, daughter," he rumbled, and the heroine could have sworn that she had felt the sands tremble. "Children, adults dressed as children, a tin can and a glowing match." The demon chuckled, the fires in his eyes flickering with mirth. "Perhaps you've mistaken our relationship in my absence, daughter. Let me correct that misnomer." Silence. The sand maelstrom stood with the young girl held protectively, and his arms simply exploded into a dust cloud. "Huh?" Trigon stood stock still before raising his slightly smoking fist before his eyes. "Looks like that matchstick of yours might be something more, little bird." A few feet away, Maelstrom gently set Raven down, having carried her bridal style away from her father's attack. "Remember the plan," he whispered to her before turning to the ragged-looking being. "So you're Trigon? Huh? You don't seem like much." For the second time within a minute, in Canary's vision, Trigon disappeared. This time, however, Maelstrom did as well, and only the trail of dancing orange flames, flickering crimson energy and kicked up sand marked their paths. Canary, in a moment of fear, found herself praying for her shinobi friend before her rational mind kicked in. Sharing a glance with Raven, Zatara, Cyborg, Green Arrow and Aqualad, she nodded. Maelstrom was doing his part. It was time for them to do their part. To Maelstrom, the moment he had engaged Trigon in battle, rest of the world had been reduced to a single point in the distance, a shining star on a dark horizon. Trigon was in the here and now, and the demon demanded all of his attention. Unlike the Flash, who wasn't a warrior anyway, and the possessed Wonder Woman, whose combat skills were dampened by the forced takeover, Trigon was a warrior that was fully in control of himself and, though likely that he wasn't at full power just yet, all of his skills had most definitely not left him. Every strike, every punch, every kick, was aimed to cripple, and that was not even factoring in the dark energy he released with every attack. The shinobi was confident in his own powers, yet even he had to admit that, for Trigon to be so powerful right off the bat, then his power level at its peak. Without a word, the shinobi ducked an incoming right hook and twisted around the follow-up palm to the jaw, before connecting with a powerful kick to the midsection that sent Trigon blasting back, giving him time to disengage from the fight. "He's really good," the shinobi reported over the mind link. "Wonder Woman, we need to stick together, keep the pressure on him." "Our fighting styles," Wonder Woman started. "You lead, I'll adapt." He cut her off brusquely. "Superman, get ready. The moment you see him out in the open, you ram that bastard in the mug with everything you got." A part of the Man of Steel felt a tad annoyed by the fact that it was Maelstrom that was giving the order, but for the greater good, got it. While they communicated via Miss Martian's link, Trigon was getting back to his feet. "I'm impressed, Matchstick. You're not half bad. You're not too bad yourself." The shinobi shrugged lazily, though his every muscle was prepared for battle. "You're the one giving my daughter false hope then?" The demon warlord chuckled as the dark energies in his hands elongated and reformed themselves into obsidian-hued scimitars. "The one filling her head with lies?" Lies? His sensory sphere had locked onto everyone present, so he could feel Wonder Woman sidle up toward him before she stood by his side. "I'm afraid I don't understand you." "I can feel Raven's emotions solidifying. Her conviction grows stronger, and her belief that you will defeat me clouds her mind as she runs from the truth." Trigon's grin turned savage. "She is my daughter, my blood. My nature flows within her, and as much as she seeks to deny it, she will succumb to my desires. Her opening the gate today was just the first step. She will never become like you, demon," Wonder Woman yelled as she dove toward him, her blade carving a trail through the sands, Maelstrom just a few steps behind. "Trigon's realm, you know, when I suggested a vacation," Green Arrow grunted as he jumped off one of the winged, serpent-like demons onto another just seconds before the freeze arrow he had stuck between the beast's wings blew up, dragging down to collide with a few more of its kind. "I really didn't think you'd be up for this kind of thing." "What's not to like?" the heroine shouted across from her own winged carrier, cutting herself off to unleash another cry that sent the horde she had targeted tumbling, whatever brains they had utterly scrambled. Tan-worthy temps, an exercise routine better than any spa, scenic environment. "Huge-ass creatures baying for our blood," Cyborg yelled back, every bit of processing power he had diverted to tracking the demons ahead, all available weaponry programmed to cut a swath through for Raven and the rest of the team to head straight for the shattered cell block. "If this is your idea of a vacation, then I'd hate to see what you think is an actual workday." "Trust me, you do not want to see that," Green Arrow added as he fired off another barrage of arrows. "Neeb med ni sniahc," Zatara intoned, entombing all the stragglers within his line of sight in steel chains. "I'm uncertain why you feel the need to engage in casual conversation at such a time." Further down, the rest of the group battled their way onward, Shazam in the lead taking out whatever rabble remained after Cyborg's assault. "Artemis, cover Troya," Aqualad ordered as he sliced a demon in half before kicking another away. "Superboy, back up Raven and Robin, Shard." "On you, got it," the princess yelled back as she tore through another horde. "This is getting old fast," Artemis grunted as she jumped over a demon and tagged it with an explosive arrowhead. "We're getting bogged." "Give me a moment," Troya yelled out before rocketing upward, battling her way past even greater hordes. "Troya, where are you?" Artemis snarled, kicking away another demon and firing an explosive arrow into the mix. "Fuck, I'm out of explosive arrows." Just then, Troya flashed past in a blur just moments before an earth-shaking rumble nearly shook the grounded heroes. Seconds later, a portion of the bridge they had fought past collapsed. "That should stall grounded reinforcements," the Amazon yelled as she dived up to continue fighting. Aqualad grunted. "Raven, head forward with Shazam. Troya, regroup with them and punch your way forward. Everyone else, form up on Shard and I. We'll draw attention while making our way to them." "On it. We need to hurry," Robin shouted. "Not that I lack faith, but the longer it takes us, the greater the chances of Trigon ripping our world apart." The youngest warrior's words rang true to everyone over their comms and spurred them to fight harder. The desert maelstrom ducked beneath a slashing scimitar and countered with a stab of his short staff that was immediately blocked by Trigon's second scimitar. Sensing Wonder Woman's presence incoming, the shinobi ducked her incoming swain, taking one of Trigon's weapons with him. The demon simply stepped back, avoiding the swing before stepping forward with a savage headbutt that threw the Amazon back. Maelstrom didn't waste a second, extending a chakra arm from his back to send the demon flying while he grabbed Wonder Woman and got the hell out of dodge. Not even a second did his punch. Miss Martian, get ready. If everything Zatara told us is accurate, things are about to get worse. Flash, I hope your tank is full. Ready to go. The Flash assured. Good, then The shinobi grunted as he was forced to dive out of the way as Superman came crashing down. Superman. I'm fine. The Man of Steel grunted as he sat up. Damn, he hits hard. I know. Wonder Woman agreed, eyes locked onto the dust cloud he had just been hurled through. He's getting up again. You are quite impressive, Matchstick. Trigon rumbled as he stepped out of the dust cloud, his shirt utterly gone and the pants reduced to little more than shorts. His body was covered in a number of thin lines and bruises at the spots Wonder Woman and Maelstrom had connected yet. Even as they watched, the wounds sealed shut. And your woman too. I haven't been hit quite so many times in close combat. Ah, those were just scratches. You're already healed up and everything. Just getting ready for the next round. The blades in the demon's hands were replaced by the dark energy orbs from the first round against the shinobi. You're good at close combat. Let's see how you fare at ranged attacks. Move. Maelstrom dived out of the way of a beam of dark energy, his fingers already weaving through the seals for his counter. Raiden. Rasen Boruto. Twin beams of lightning shot out of his hands, twisting into a helix an instant before barreling into the spot Trigon had been moments before as huge rocks Miss Martian had dug up from beneath the sands rained down on the demon. Trigon's laughter rang out as he dodged and returned fire at the group of heroes. I knew you wouldn't disappoint me. Shoten. Shuriken Ranbo. A host of deep orange crystal shuriken burst out of the ground, their trajectories carrying them toward the demon warlord. Kaden. Rasen Enden. A wall of metal shot out of the ground, intercepting the crystal weapons while a beam of energy ruptured the fireball. You realize that I know just what you're attempting, yes? No idea what you're talking about. The shinobi growled as his attempt to pin the demon via gravity manipulation was somehow foiled yet again. Raiden. Tengoku Jusei. Oh really? Trigon spun round and slapped the SUV-sized ball of lightning into the distance while harrying Superman, Wonder Woman and the Flash with multiple, rapid-fire energy blasts. So you're not trying to hold my attention while my wayward daughter and your friends try to salvage the wreckage of my old cell block? TCH. Fuck you. Doden. Ganbin Hogosha. A thick slab of rocky plates shot up in front of Miss Martian, intercepting Trigon's energy blasts and giving the girl more ammunition to send back to the demon. Kaden. Kaikaku Shinto. The shinobi sucked in a deep breath then fired out a baseball-sized fireball that crossed the distance to Trigon at hypersonic speeds. Told, Trigon's next words were cut off as the fireball he had just dodged exploded behind his head. Finally, Maelstrom yelled as he clenched his fist and yanked downward. Bansho Tenon. The forces of gravity bent to his will and dragged the demon warlord to the ground. Futon. Asakuki Ru. The winds answered his call, creating a violently spinning sphere of air that trapped the demon within and turned its confines into a vacuum. Depriving me of air? Trigon laughed deeply as a second pair of eyes opened above the first and his skin deepened to a dark crimson. You forget that I am not human. An explosion of power ruptured the sphere, throwing the heroes back a couple of feet and blowing up a dust cloud. Everyone okay? Maelstrom asked the instant he regained his footing. Guys, the Flash called out, his tone implying terrified awe. Great Hera. Wonder Woman's eyes bulged as she watched the shadow within the cloud grow to tremendous proportions. Deafening laughter boomed out as a pair of horns jutted out of the cloud. You see it now? You see the futility of challenging me? You will fail. My daughter will fail and this world will fall? I can definitely see why Zatara's fellows felt keeping him out at all costs was a priority. Maelstrom growled. I'll keep him busy, you guys hit whenever you see an open spot. You'll keep him busy? The Flash asked, how holy. The rest of the group were just as surprised as the speedster when, just like Trigon had mere moments ago, the shinobi's power output surged and his cloak expanded outward, growing larger and reforming until a roar every bit as deafening as Trigon's laugh erupted from the giant bipedal fox that Maelstrom had become, its height topping off just below the demon's jaw. Yet again you rise to the challenge, Matchstick, Trigon boomed as he set himself into a fighting stance, ready to do battle against the golden, nine-tailed fox. You'll wish I hadn't, the shinobi swore as he directed his construct to attack. Trigon's realm, hey Raven. Shazam grunted as he punched away what felt like the millionth winged demon. How long will this binding thing be? I'm not too sure. The young magic user yelled back as she settled into a lotus posture and closed her eyes. Seconds later, she levitated off the ground, the crystal shard she had selected for her task hovering an arm's length away from her forehead. The exact spells I'm going to use don't exactly specify time limits and I fully intend to keep dear old dad locked away for good. Alright then, everyone form a perimeter and hold your lines. Flyers, give us air cover. Superboy, Shard, you're on clearance duty, if anyone is getting bogged. Blow them back. Got it, Superboy snarled from his position. I'm out. Artemis cried as her hands closed on air in the spare quiver she had donned a while back. The Emerald Archer loosed the arrow in his grip. Hold on, Shard, cover. On it, assured that there would be no gap in their defense line, the hooded hero ran to join his protege, pulling out what looked like a scrunchie with 2 buttons on it out of a pouch. As he neared her, he pressed one of the 2 buttons, and the scrunchie enlarged until it became a strap, the second button becoming a quiver full of arrows. Courtesy of the Atom, he yelled as he helped her unstrap the 2 empty quivers on her shoulder. Express delivery by Aero Logistics. Ha ha, Artemis shot back sarcastically before offering a tiny smile, thanks. It's what his mentors do, Yorst EHT snomed Aerofeb MHTIWSM Rots Fo Arif, Zatara intoned, incinerating multiple demons with extreme prejudice. Cyborg, 2 o'clock. The mecha human didn't turn from his section of the sky, instead diverting his shoulder-mounted cannons to deal with the threat. I really hope Raven's spell doesn't take too long. Raven, while the Justice League and the rest of her friends battled with physical might, Raven, while seemingly doing nothing, was engaged in a war of her own. You cannot defeat me, Raven. The voices were like icy wisps in her mind. The coldness of their words were constantly vying for her attention, yet the few times she had attempted to track them down and banish them from her mind, they had simply vanished, only to reappear every time she tried to concentrate on the spells. She had no clue how long it had been, minutes, hours, days, or perhaps mere seconds had gone by. Time was a liquid concept in her mind at the moment. Every fiber of her being was devoted to completing the spell chain that would bind her father's totality into the tiny Azereth crystal. Spells to hold his power, spell to hold his mind, spells to isolate his mind from his power, spells to keep the seductively corrupt nature of his power isolated and inert. Hundreds of spells orders of magnitude more complex than her first attempt were being fitted into every crevice of the crystal's lattice, each spell reinforced by the primal power of Azereth itself. It was a taxing job. You know that these attempts will fail, daughter. And the damned voices, empowered by her father's difficult. I will get this done, guys, she swore as she finished with one point and moved to the next. I swear, Naruto, I will finish this in time. Earth Maelstrom ducked beneath a swing of the warlord's fist before commanding his construct to leap, repositioning himself from his spot between its eyes to the back of its mouth, fingers flying through hand seals. Kaden. Hano Dai Kozui. The fox roared out a deluge of white-hot flames that poured down on its opponent, the intensity of the flames blinding the rest of the shinobi's allies. Inside the fox, Maelstrom knew that his last attack would have little to no effect and was already preparing his next. True to form, the demon leapt out of the flames, his fist cocked back for what would have been a devastating blow. The shinobi was ready, though, and so was quickly able to direct his construct to maneuver to the left, allowing the punch to fly by harmlessly before ramming a clawed fist into Trigon's side. Rasengan. The spinning blue orb exploded the instant it connected, releasing all the energy the shinobi had compressed into the wrecking ball-sized orb blasted Trigon away. Superman, who had watched the 2 colossal beings struggle against one another, took the opportunity. Flying at 3 times the speed of sound, he lit into Trigon, throwing punch after punch to the titan-sized demon's chest, an unrelenting force seeking to pummel the demon into submission. He only peripherally noticed when Wonder Woman joined him, so great was his focus. Everybody off him, the Flash warned. Now, the mental shout caught their attention and both heroes immediately took to the skies. Less than a second later, the Flash, moving at hypersonic speed, slammed home a thunderous punch to the prone demon's body. For a few seconds, reality itself seemed to have ground to an eerie, silent halt. Then, impossibly, Trigon moved. Maelstrom reacted. Upon noticing the demon's hand twitch, the shinobi directed his construct to dive, having it grab the heroes close to the waking demon in its gargantuan paws, roll up to its feet and jump, a bijudama already forming in front of its muzzle. The instant the sphere hit critical mass, the shinobi fired it off, hitting the downed demon dead center. The resultant explosion let loose a shockwave that sent the shinobi's construct tumbling midair, requiring Maelstrom's direct control to prevent it from crash landing. He turned away from the mushroom cloud to stare at a wide-eyed Miss Martian whom he had ensconced in his construct the instant he had created it. Is everyone alright? The 3 heroes standing on his construct's paws replied positively, though their tones carried hints of their disbelief. You're quite the powerhouse, aren't you, Maelstrom? The Flash thought, though the mind link carried the thought over. Let's just hope that put him down. I'm uncertain if I can go bigger than that. The shinobi lied, though with justifiable reason. If he had to pull out even larger guns, the planetary-tailed beast bomb Rasen Shuriken, for example, he suspected that Trigon would respond with even greater force. They couldn't risk that happening. We'll have to. Superman growled angrily, seeing a shadow rise within the fog like smoke. He's up again. Yo Maelstrom, buddy, the Flash called over the mind link as the shinobi waded forward, engaging the demon with his vulpine construct, trading blows with the warlord. If you've got any trick, now may be a good time to use them. Didn't I just hint that I was fresh out of tricks? The shinobi grunted as the construct staggered back from a hit, directing his construct to switch tactics and get on all fours to use its tails to attack. Shouldn't you guys have something? You're the one with the big targets on your chests? He's taken what we've got and tossed it right back at us, Superman added. I could try to subdue him. Absolutely not, Maelstrom snapped at the girl beside him. I am not taking the chance of him corrupting you somehow, Miss M, and you damn well better get that into your head. Maelstrom is right. Wonder Woman agreed. That would be too great a risk. How about we shove him through the gate, shut it down here and then take him out on the opposite side, Flash asked. Can't risk that either. Wonder Woman shot down the idea. He's already this powerful here. How much more so when he's got the home advantage? Plus, Zatara made it clear that a rift gate is the only way to move from his realm to this and it has to be opened on this side. Maelstrom continued as he prepared another technique. For all we know, we may get trapped in his dimension if we toe that line. So what do we do? Superman asked. Raiden. Harayu Gekizoku Shinten Reiho. The fox spun around and unleashed a solid pillar of lightning into Trigon's chest. We put our trust in Raven. Raven, alright girl. Just 2 more to go. Raven thought to herself as she turned away from the completed points. Let's get this over with. Enough. The thunderous voice of her father blasted through her mindscape, throwing her back from the shock. I have permitted you time to return willfully, yet you have scorned my affection. I will have no more of your insubordination. She should have been terrified. For years even the thought of hearing his voice darkened her soul with dread. Yet she couldn't feel the overpowering fear she once had, couldn't feel the mind-numbing terror she associated with his voice. If anything, she felt sorely annoyed by his interruption. With little more than a thought, she moved over to the spot she needed to be to continue her work, only for a wall of raging purple flames to explode into being, obstructing her path. Trigon's voice, when he spoke, was ice. You are on your final warning, child. Stop this pointless rebellion and return to my side, or I will destroy these insects you call friends. You'll destroy them either way, she replied evenly as she flew through the flames to continue her work. My way, you cease to be a problem and they stay safe. You will fail, Raven, you and your friends will fall. You trying to scare me or convince yourself? She shot back, a tiny smirk pulling at her lips. 'Cause your words smack of denial to me. Insolent, nah, Maelstrom and his team kicking you about? She pressed on even as her mind formed the final spells that would end him. Or maybe Aqualad, Canary and the others are showing you just how ineffective your hordes are. Either way, you seem to be running scared, old man. You will suffer for this. Oh, I won't be suffering from anything. You on the other hand, well, consider this payback for Azareth. And, with that final jab, she chanted the final sequence of spells to put him away for good. Earth, everyone get behind me. Maelstrom shouted as he sensed a massive buildup of energy in the Titanic demon as he staggered from Superman and Wonder Woman's attacks. We've got him on the back foot now, Superman grunted as he pushed his attack. We can't let up now. Get back here, now. The shinobi snapped furiously as he ran through his options, seeking a defense for the impending explosion. He's going to blow. The Flash was the first to make it back, with Wonder Woman and Superman flying through the opening the shinobi had made in his construct's foot for them less than 2 seconds later. At the top, Maelstrom completed the hand seals for his technique, his construct slamming its paws onto the sand as he bellowed out. Shoten. Shoryu no Tate. The orange crystals made their return, erupting from the ground as giant tiles that formed an even larger rectangular shield that the bipedal fox hid behind. The world disappeared in a blinding burst of white, accompanied by a thunderous retort. Protected from the blast wave by the crystal shield, the shinobi mentally wheeled on the heroes. We've been fighting him for over 30 minutes without putting a dent in him, then suddenly we're pushing him back, and that didn't seem even the least bit. Wonder Woman had the decency to sound bashful. We were getting a bit desperate. No offense, but I did not expect that from you, Wonder Woman. The shinobi frowned. From the Flash and Superman, certainly, but not you. Miss Martian's voice cut off the men's protests, her tone riddled with bemusement. Excuse me, is he running away? The question drew their immediate attention and they turned to observe. Holy, they did it, Maelstrom gasped as he watched the demon run toward the rift gate. Raven and the others, they shit everyone out. Without waiting for their response, the shinobi deactivated the fox construct and raced toward Trigon, hands flashing through seals as he ran. Doden. Chikyu no Sokubaku. The earth responded to his power, huge earthen shackles rising from the earth to entwine Trigon's feet and send the demon crashing to the ground. Maelstrom, what the hell are you doing? Superman shouted mentally, drawing a wince from Miss Martian as he flew to the shinobi. We had him on the run and you Saved the lives of all our teammates on the other side. Maelstrom snarled back, his tone reverting to the harsh one he had gained during his time as a Jonin, as he skidded to a stop in front of the rift gate and reactivated his construct. Stop losing yourself in the damned moment, boy, and stick to the plan. If he gets through that gate he'll have full access to his powers and he will tear our friends apart, so I advise you to get your shit together because right now we need to do everything we can to hold him off. No other words were shared between the defenders, none were needed. Ego, pride, self, none of that mattered at that moment. Cautioning Maelstrom on his manners could be done late, for now, only the mission mattered. With a bestial roar, the fox launched itself forward, closing the gap to the demon as fast as it could, and delivered a thunderous hammer strike to the back of the fallen demon, sending the warlord's body back into the sand. Within moments, the heroes joined him, striking out as hard as they could to whatever part of his body they could hit, doing their utmost to keep him down. This was it. Their best shot at ending the demon's threat relied not on them, though their attacks kept Trigon distracted, but on the efforts of a young girl. Defying her own blood for those she now saw as her family. End word count pre-A, N. 10,050 A, N word count, 850. Warning. Long ass A, and incoming. So, in this chapter, I made a comment. The speedster could likely cover longer distances faster than he could. Up close he had the advantage. Basically, that line says that the Flash is faster in a race from point A to point B, but Naruto is faster at close ranges. Basically in fights, it's actually the opposite of a Minato. Tag at the destination, versus Flash scenario where Minato would likely get to the distance faster but would get pummeled by Flash in a second. It's my personal opinion on the who's faster question. I won't bore you with my reasons, though, cause this AN is gonna be long enough as it is. Also, for the DC fans, I did, in a way, nerf Wonder Woman when she went up against Naruto. I wonder if you noticed that I didn't refer to her as Wonder Woman when she was possessed. Well, that's because, for all intents, she wasn't. That was corruption, the apparition in control of her body, and while it did push at Naruto a little bit, it definitely wasn't as skilled as the actual Wonder Woman could be. Regarding Zatara's barrier and Naruto simply zipping past, the barrier was designed to keep stuff out, not to keep things in. Now, a few review responses on the effects of the separation of worlds. While I will most definitely deal with the mass loss of lives that has just occurred the world over, as regards Naruto, wrecking the league's shit over it. Not yet. Trust me, I have plans for the confrontation between Naruto and the league over the whole killing thing. I had literally just reworked a few plans before I read some of your reviews, and it felt tingly to know that I was anticipating thine desires and all, but that won't come up directly just yet. All you guys need to remember here is that cracks already exist. Widening them to breaking point is all that's left. On the pregnancy and infant mortality thing. Call what I did here a cop-out if you will, but I had already penned down the idea of 3 worlds in order to facilitate Trigon's rising. I even gave you guys hints in the last chapter. Cersei's appearance as the 5th sorcerer, Clarion's words about the team not having a ladies with baby bumps. In order to set up the Dimension Rift Gate they needed a world where there was next to no opposition, so pregnant ladies world. Of course, many women and unborn kids would still die. The lack of medical attention mid-labor and all. And that definitely plays a bit of a role in upcoming events, so best of both worlds-ish? On Kaguya and the side she stayed on. The spell, Emo, tells ages apart based on I'd say physical appearance. It would explain why Clarion stays on the kid's side even though he's likely a couple hundred if not 1,000 years old. Kaguya's body is physically younger. Plus, I turned up the whole age limit thing to 21 so. On the tag in Clarion, it never worked on him. Clarion's a lord of chaos. He wields elemental chaos as a power source. That's what flows inside him. If you watched the episode, Misplaced, you'll see that, with a snap of his fingers, Clarion casually disintegrated the shackles Dr. Fate, Zatanna version, had placed on him. I honestly couldn't see the tag holding him down when the power of order couldn't. On Naruto feeling drained after the little medical jutsu he used on Raven. The idea that simply because he's got both Indra and Asura chakras grants Naruto perfect control is a flawed one. Even if, and this is a big if, he had gained perfect control on his chakra before leaving home, the addition of the Indra chakra would simply throw all that out of whack, forcing him to go back to the drawing board. Plus, Blondie has never used medical chakra before, so either way, it would still be a tremendous strain on him mentally.